It was a part of a presentation that we were planning for the budget hearing on May 16th. So we just wanted to put some pertinent slides out there. One thing to point out, and it was brought up at the last budget workshop by Councilman Creepy, the amount of services that we provide pales in comparison to other municipalities, especially in Morris County, and I would say the state, because my experience from working in other municipalities, we offer so many more services. And if you look at what a regular or an average tax bill is, or if you can just use a number, if you're paying $10,000 a year in taxes, 2,500 of that, or less than 2,500 of that, goes to pay the municipal portion, all of the services that are offered. It's pretty amazing. But I just wanted to point that out for you, and thank you again for the opportunity.
Okay, thank you, guys. Any statements from members of the council at this time?
No, this time.
Okay. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and get started. Our first department is the sewer department. Mr. Beckmeyer?
Thank you. And first of all, I'd like to say I was also disappointed that I didn't get a chance to speak last week. So I'm thrilled to be here. And I want to thank the mayor, council, and the BA for your continued support of the sewer utility and our efforts to improve efficiency and dependability. Also, some of you might have heard there was an issue on Route 280 today. Looks like it was related to our pump station number 4 redirection project, as they were tunneling under the highway. It looks like some of the soil, as they push the pipe through, gets carried away with it. But the DOT was out there working on it with their contractor, and our engineer and contractor were also out there looking to rectify the problem. So they're moving ahead with that. One of the things is that the sewer department operates under an NJPDES permit and the rules and regulations of the US EPA and NJDEP. Unlike other departments, we must follow these permits and laws. In other places, you can maybe cut things, add programs or whatever. We can't. We have to follow their rules, and if we do not, there can be dire consequences. One of the things, if we don't meet our permit limits, there could be a construction ban. Now, last week there was a big talk about new ratables and new buildings and everything else. Well, if we get a construction ban because we don't meet permit conditions, any project over 8,500 gallons needs a DEP permit, and you won't get it. So it's important that we maintain that level, that we satisfy those permit requirements as we've been doing. We operate 24/7, nights, weekends, and everything. We can't put a sign up, no flushing today. We have to keep working, doing things all the time. One of the things on your budget sheet, the 2022 appropriations, at least the sheet I had, was inaccurate. It had $33,121,000, should have been $6,397,000 as appropriated. And if you look at the 700 accounts, which were basically the operation expenses and so on, we only went up 0.3% from what we asked for in 2022 versus 23. Basically, all items are flat. Items we have additional costs, usually in the case of chemicals, sludge disposal, and so on. But at this time, I'm going to ask you for an extra $100,000 because I have a special project under our permit. The EPA wants a headworks analysis at a treatment plant. So I'm looking for an extra $100,000 under line 268 for the study to submit that permit to the DEP. Salary increases in the contract for union contracts with white collar minimal adjustments. And from 2021 to 22, overtime decreased by 10%. Again, trying to move things around to make it more efficient. A couple things, the improvements in the Noel sewer system have been completed. So we had 5 pump stations all over the place. We now have 1 pump station with a generator to better serve that whole recreational facility. Pump station number 4 project is substantially complete. with sewage flowing through the new pipeline, and the old pump station ready to be abandoned or demolished. We're still working on that. That savings is approximately $36,000 a year in electrical savings, and will save about 15,000 gallons a day in water usage, which I think is more important to the township. I think there's a deficit, and if you figure a single home uses about 135, that's a lot of single-family homes we got using water there. In addition to the grant which we're working through right now, we've received from the Congresswoman a special appropriation. I understand from the DEP, because we went through the H2O loan program, and since the design of this basically takes away electric power, we will be getting $2 million in principal forgiveness, which is the new word for grants. So instead of our project cost being $8 million, it should be $2 million. We'll only have to borrow long term. And that's because we went through the program. And the issue with the other grant was that we were a little too quick to do they want shovel-ready projects, but we're too shovel-ready. We put the application in, we were ready to go, and by the time they approved it, we were already built. So now I have 2 other pump stations to be coming up in the future. The new road pump station, and then also the one in Lake Hiawatha, to make them more efficient and safe. So we really will have almost all the pump stations where man entry in the wet well is required eliminated. So that eliminates that potential of problems. And at that point, any questions?
Questions?
I guess my first question, thank you, Mr. Beckmeyer, for being here today with us. Can you repeat what is the actual amount? You said there was a typo. What is the amount that you're actually requesting?
Well, the amount I'm requesting right now is $6,499,500. What I mentioned before was that on the sheet you have for 2022 appropriation, it looked like $3,121,000, but it was really $6,397,000. So our requested budget only has gone up slightly.
So do you understand, and I'm sure there's some way we can, for future budgets, have a better procedure, because this is the 3rd time now where the number that we're looking at and evaluating is much different as, you know, we come to talk to you by almost $3 million. You could understand how that's a little disappointing from my position.
Councilman, sorry, if you don't mind. That's one of the points that Mayor brought up when we met the day before the prior hearing or workshop. The old system, or the current system, is part of the old system where numbers were taken from our financial system, Edmunds, typed in to Excel, printed out, and then put into books. Next year, we are going to be changing to completely going through Edmunds. It'll be much easier for you, much easier for us, and you won't see these kind of errors.
Okay, thank you. I guess my first question is this $100,000 study that the EPA just dropped on us. What if we say no to it?
Well, I guess we could. And then we probably may pay more to the attorneys to defend us when the Attorney General comes knocking at the door. I think the township has always been in a position to work with the DEP and follow the rules rather than fight them. There have been many issues through the years, permit requirements, that drive up the cost of treatment. And rather than just saying, no, we're not doing it, again, because their big stick is to institute the construction ban, which stymies development of town. And I don't know what they would do legally if basically it is said, you know, jump in the lake. We're not going to do it.
Yeah.
So.
And I guess my third question would be, I understand that your department has to be treated differently with respects to cuts, but can you tell me what is the, I guess, how does the calculus differ when we're borrowing from your department to balance our budget? How is that treated? Because in this budget, we're taking over about $1 million to balance our budget. Can you walk me through how that's treated?
I really can't. And the reason is because I'm only on the expense side and doing the work side, not the revenue side. So I have no real idea what's coming in and so on. And that's been since I've been here for almost 7 years. So I've always been happy because everything that was presented to the council, they approved it. They, for our needs and so on. But on the revenue side, sir, I have no idea.
Okay, so who would be the right person to direct that question to?
Yep, so going back 2011, around 2011 until 2023, the sewer utility has always been supporting the general fund balance, ranging from 500,000 in the earlier years, and then it went up as much as 2.3 million, close to 3 million the last 3 years. And then the last year was 1.7, this year's 1.8. So it's really a matter of where you have sufficient funds, fund balance in your general fund, or that's how it has been, and going back.
So as a
yeah.
follow-up to that, what is the impact when we take that money from the sewer utility and we put it into our general fund? What's the impact on the utility itself?
Well, when we met,
are they not able to
2 weeks ago,
invest in infrastructure? Are they not able to keep with upgrades? What are the effects of doing that?
okay, as explained 2 weeks ago, it's a two-way relationship. It's not just one way. So when something happens in sewer or any other utilities, if the utilities runs out of money, the general fund would have to cover their piece. Likewise, the utility excess surplus can be used to fund the general fund. It's not right or wrong. It goes both ways.
Joe, maybe we should be given a little history here. When you upgraded the sewer treatment plant significantly to new technology, and we're saving 75% on our electric bill as an end result, and actually had 2 empty buildings, we didn't need that many processes to process the sewage. Why don't you go back to that point in time, because
Got 5 minutes left.
that amount of savings was significant. And we had 2 ways to give that back. Either reduce the rates, and if we reduce the rates, it reduces the rates for the commercial properties, not just the homes, the commercial properties, and the other towns that we have contracts with to process their sewage. They also would get a reduction in rates, not just the Parsippany residents. So if we take that surplus, that savings that we accomplished, and that was around 2011, as I recall, rather than reduce the rates and benefit commercial properties and other towns, if we use that surplus to offset the township's budget, okay, it goes only directly back to the residents of Parsippany and not to commercial properties and not to other towns.
Well, I think there's a couple things rather than just and again, being around the block a few times, one of the issues is that the sewer charges, as are the water charges, are on all properties. So if you have any tax exempt properties, they pay water and sewer. And so that your base for spreading out is larger. The municipalities, our customer municipalities, pay a percentage of the budget. Because I don't want to say that, the township is using any surplus they generated. It's basically what we spent, they pay a percentage of that. They don't, based on their flow. It's not like we're taking extra money from them and it's sitting anyplace. As I said, as we go through this, we're always looking, and that time was a begging example, because by changing the raw sewage pump motors and by changing the blowers in the aeration system and the diffusers, basically the savings was about $1 million a year electrical costs, which was significant. But now it's always, how do you save, the next 500 and whatever, and just like I mentioned before, by doing pump station number 4, we're gonna save about $35,000 a month in electric costs, or whatever. So these are the things we have to keep looking at. I know there has been discussions about, should we, no wind, but solar. That's something that's been discussed in the past. At what point, you grab the low-hanging fruit, and at what point you keep going up the tree, always trying to be more efficient. Again, solar is more efficient than it was, let's say, 20 years ago. Is it now the right time? So that's something we have to look in. We also have to look in everything. How we operate our pumps. As soon as, I gotta make sure, my staff doesn't all of a sudden bang on, have, let's say, 250 horsepower pump running and bang on another one, because then we get a peak load and we'll carry that peak demand charge for the whole month. So there's a whole bunch of things like that we have to make sure we do on low level and also on the capital improvement side to make sure we save money. But every time you have a new DEP regulation, when I first got here, we had none on nitrates. Now we do. So that generates more sludge as you try to collect that. We had no limit on phosphate. We do now, and now we have that. At what point does the DEP say now, everybody hears about this PFOS, PFOA, the forever chemicals? At what point do they say, okay, Parsippany, start treating for that? And that's another, who knows how many million, in order to take it out. Again, we're in a sort of precarious position because we discharge into the Rockaway, Whippany rivers, upstream of the Passaic River, that feed, and you have the little Passaic Valley Water Commission, North Jersey District, who is it, Suez, United Water, or whatever it was, they all take water out of the Passaic River. So the DEP is on our back more than if we were down in Ocean County discharging to the ocean. And that's where we are, and that's what we have to do.
1 minute left.
You had brought up low-hanging fruit, solar, exploring solar. Has there been any studies conducted to see what the benefits to the township would be of putting solar on some of our township assets?
There was a study done, I believe, a while ago, when Councilman DeFerro was mentioning, and that was one of the proposals at that time, and it was brought up, and I think he was one that discovered it, a report that was sitting there said by becoming more energy efficient with the equipment you have, you'll save more money than solar. Because it gets to the same thing, what are we gonna do with the solar? Are we gonna buy it? We're gonna rent the space? We gonna whatever? What is the requirements? There's a study recently talking about solar on a landfill. Well, Sharkey landfill. Well, I don't know what the requirements of that are gonna be, so that's something else has to be looked into. But it's something we have to dig more deeply into.
The study that we had in 2011 for solar, the proposal was to put solar panels on Sharkey's dump, on all that acreage, to save 10% of our electric bill. At the time, our previous superintendent, George Rankowitz, had recommended that we upgrade the plant, and that wasn't followed. But the council, over the mayor's objections at that time, funded a study of the sewer treatment plant and what needed to be done. Okay. That study was shelved and never shared with the township. So when Mayor Luther came by and said, we can save 10% by putting solar panels only at a cost of only $8 million, if we spent the $8 million and put solar panels there, we would still have an aging sewer treatment plant, 40 years old, manufactured, discontinued at that point. Parts were getting hard to find. And that's when I jumped up and down and says, wait a minute, if we have a study, we should upgrade the sewer treatment plant and save 75% of our electric bill, rather than spend $8 million for solar panels and save 10%.
Okay.
And that's the direction we moved at
As
that time.
I know, I just want to say something. Councilman said, in 2011, we were the third largest user of energy on the eastern grid, the sewer treatment plant. So yes, the study was done with regards to solar panel, and that was 11% savings. So when we upgraded the plant, we realized 70-something percent,
75%.
which was $149,000 a month. We're planning an energy cost down to $33,000 a month. So there was significant savings. So solar, at that time, I don't know about now, it wasn't convenient for the township.
Well, on top of the study we had at that time, Mr. Beckmeyer made further improvements that were not even in that study.
Okay, so at this time, we are over our time. So, Mr. Beckmeyer, I have to thank you for your time.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
Always a great presentation.
Always happy to do so.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
All right, at this time, we'd like to call up Mr. Rewarka from the Water Department.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I have with me my Assistant Superintendent, Sean Andres. I'd like to talk a little introduction about Parsippany's water system. The Parsippany-Troy Hills water system is considered a large public community.
John, put the microphone a little closer to you.
Just gonna eat it. I'll start over. The Parsippany-Troy Hills water system is considered a large public community water system and is regulated by the US EPA and the NJDEP, just as the sewer is. We are constantly monitoring and reporting the results of our water supply for compliance with the EPA Safe Drinking Water Act and the NJDEP water standards. Both the DEP and the EPA are constantly evaluating and changing the standards for drinking water. They are adding new contaminants that we must monitor for, lowering the maximum threshold on existing contaminants, and requiring unregulated contaminant sampling. This is an ongoing process with the utility, which we must comply with and report on a regular basis. Some facts about the Parsippany Water Department. The Water Department has 34 facilities to maintain and operate. We have over 220 miles of water main. That's over 1 million feet of pipe. We have 1,900 fire hydrants, 4,000 valves, which need to be operated annually and certified to the DEP as operational. In 2022, we repaired over 60 water main breaks. A special thanks to our professional and dedicated staff for their incredible efforts. First, I'd like to speak on some recent accomplishments. The Route 46 water main replacement rehabilitation Phase 1 pipework was completed from Troy Road to Crown Point Road. We installed a permanent emergency generator at well 14. We increased the capacity of our Klondike booster station from 500 gallons a minute to 800 gallons per minute. We replaced 2,400 feet of water main on Lakeshore Drive and Mohawk Ave in Lake Hiawatha. We repainted our Route 10 1 million gallon storage tank. We brought a dormant well, well 9, back online just last month and installed some chlorine contact piping per the DEP's requirement. That well has been offline for over 20 years. And I'm pleased to say that this well is currently producing just under 750,000 gallons per day. I would also like to address some questions that were brought up at last week's council meeting. One of the first questions inquired how many wells are either partially or totally in disrepair. My response to that question is none of our wells are in disrepair. We keep our well facilities in exceptional condition at all times. I believe the real question being asked is how many wells are underproducing what they were originally permitted for when brand new? The answer to that question is 11 wells. Some are just under the permitted value and are responding to rehabilitative efforts. We have 8 wells that I would consider needing full replacement since the rehabilitative efforts are short-lived and showing diminishing returns. We are already in the process of replacing 3 of the most serious. The second question was relating to the purchase of water from Jersey City Reservoir to make up the cost of broke-down wells. Again, the wells aren't broke down. We do repair them. They are underproducing. The only exception is one well, which has a regulated contaminant present. This well was shut down due to an abundance of caution in 2017. This well is one of the 3 wells that is in the process of being replaced with treatment. We purchased 151 million gallons from Jersey City last year. We are contracted to pay for 150 million gallons of water, whether we use it or not. We have been under contract with Jersey City since 2004. There were questions asked about operating surplus and rate increases, which I would have to defer to our CFO. There were questions on meter changeout program. The majority of our meter bodies are over 25 years old. Old meters slow down and in some instances, stop recording altogether. They don't spin faster with age. They are way overdue to be changed. We are in a phased process of changing all meters, both residential and commercial, over the next 2 years. There was also a question about high pressure in parts of Lake Hiawatha. The pressure at any given residence or business is derived between the difference in elevation between the water tank and the elevation of the home. Properties at a higher elevation have lower pressure. Properties at a lower elevation have higher pressure due to that differential. It is recommended that any property exceeding 80 psi install a pressure reducing valve before the meter, and most do install them. The township does not get involved with the plumbing of private property. The only equipment we take ownership is the meter itself. I'm here tonight to address any questions the council may have regarding the 2023 budget requested by the Water Department.
Just a comment, if I may, Mr. Mawarka. The water that we purchase from Jersey City, as I recall, that was a DEP mandate that we have an alternate water source that forced us to do that. It wasn't because we could not provide water in the township, right?
It's going back to 2004. You're really trying my memory on this one.
Well, it's stuck in mind because people don't know that. People have the impression that, we can't keep up with water, so we have to buy it. That wasn't the case. We were mandated to do it.
Yes, there was something from the DEP back then, and I can't quite recall at this moment what it was, but there was a halt on new projects going forward until we found another supply, and that was almost 20 years ago.
I remember.
Mr. Weworka, can you quickly walk us through your request for this year in proportion to what you requested last year and actually spent?
Yes, I can. I'll start with our capital. Our capital's an ongoing expense. We are trying to address all the wells that need replacement. We have found that to replace a well costs anywhere between $3.5 million and $5 million. That seems to be the going rate. The DEP requires us to treat the current standards. Any grandfathering that was in the past for the existing well has to be brought up to current standards. So we were talking about treatment plants. My budget on the capital side includes a lot of similar items to years past. We're asking for infrastructure improvements of $3.5 million, and that's an annual request that goes on to replace water mains throughout the township. We have so many, and the expense of replacing water mains is incredible. Our Route 46 project, I believe it was a little over 6,000 feet of water main, cost almost $4 million. So that money doesn't go very far. Most of our infrastructure in town is old, especially the piping. We're also requesting additional funding for drilling of more replacement wells. We're requesting a trailer-mounted hydro excavator. This piece of equipment we purchased several years ago, and it's a daily used piece of equipment. We are wearing it out. It was originally purchased for the operation of the valves out in the road. We have over 4,000 of them. And we do use it for that, but it has multiple functions. And then we do include it in our day-to-day operations for working on customer services at the curb line. It saves us a lot of time and prevents us from doing a lot of damage to the property. We are doing improvements to our existing pumps at our booster stations. We still are working on a replacement well where we have that regulated contaminant. We're asking for some funding to be put in this year
5 minutes remaining.
and some funding be put in next year for this facility. We anticipate a cost for this well to be somewhere between $4 and $5 million. Joe Beckmeyer mentioned PFAS and PFOA. That is something that's real. There is imminent regulations coming down from the EPA that is going to currently lower the standard. They have not established the standard yet, but what they're talking will impact almost every one of our wells. So keeping up with the infrastructure is very important. We also had tank painting. That's an ongoing process. You can see some of our tanks are starting to look rather peaked and need painting.
And on that subject, isn't it correct that one of the water towers had to be repainted at a cost of almost $1 million?
Well, $1 million is typical cost for repainting tank.
But the issue with there, though, that was done 5 years ago, if I recall correctly.
No, that's incorrect.
There was a water tower that we paid for $1 million, and it rusted a lot faster than.
You're referring to the 287
Yes.
tank, and that's almost 11 years now.
How long does painting usually last for?
10 years is the usual expected life. We usually can push it to 15. In some cases, we're over 20 years on paints. Paints are very different today. They're not lead-based. The lead-based tanks seem to hold up a lot better than the current paint, but it is improving. That's a site that we're having to work with the police department on with their communication systems. We can't touch that tank till we resolve getting the police radio secured so that they can operate, and we can take that tank down offline and tarp it and paint it.
And one common complaint I get is that our water quality can be extremely tough. Is there anything that we can do to address that issue?
The short answer is no.
I'm sorry, Councilman, you're talking about hard water?
Yeah.
Yes. Hard water is common in groundwater supply wells. Water hardness in groundwater is naturally occurring, caused mainly by calcium, magnesium, and other mineral deposits as rain journeys from the ground to the underground aquifers. Hardness is not a health hazard. We currently don't treat for hardness at any of our facilities. This treatment would need a large building footprint, which we don't have, wastes a considerable amount of water in the process, and is an ongoing cost for chemical supplies and equipment. It is also a huge initial capital cost to construct. Due to the number of wells that we have, it is not financially feasible. Hardness can be treated at the user level if desired. Treatments such as water softeners, filters, electromagnetic systems are readily available for point-of-use or whole house systems. Also, turning down the hot water temperature on the hot water heaters will also help reduce mineral deposits, which is the primary complaint of the hard water.
Thank you. My last question would be, there was a very memorable increase in the water utility rates about 2 years ago. What are we doing to make sure something like that doesn't hit our residents again?
Well, that question I would have to defer to our CFO.
1 minute remaining.
Oh, I guess we could answer that. 'cause
Okay,
that's important.
Council. So when we look at the rate increase, there are usually several components we look at before we propose our rate increase. One of which is the capital projects that was improved. We look at salaries, we look at health benefits and pensions, or any special emergency, and then also we look at cash flows. So for the last 3 years, I think in combination of about 6 or 7 capital ordinance, about 39 million was approved in the last 3 years. So those capital ordinance eventually will find its way into the expenditure side of the budget. So a very simple formula, I'll just take it divided by 20 years, for example. So eventually, you're going to find debt service is going up to $2 million a year. So for a water utility, it's about 10 million. So you're looking at a little more than 10% will need to be added just to anticipate the upcoming debt service that needs to be provided in each of those years in the future. So there's many more components, but those are the primary ones when we determine or propose for a rate increase.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ho. Yeah,
I
absolutely.
want to add one thing. It's been talked about at regular meetings, and John and Joe both talked about the PFAs, and that issue may come down. The unfunded mandates that are thrusted upon us as a municipality, thrusted upon us from Trenton and from, the federal government, really affect the way that we do things. So, Mayor has said on a number of occasions, he's talked about the lead pipe replacements and how it was lead pipe at the federal level. It came to the state level, and they added the galvanized pipes too. So that adds cost, significant cost.
Okay, thank you. At this time, Mr. Walker, thank you for your time. We're going to go ahead and call up Mr. Joe General from...
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Joseph Gentleman Jr. I'm the general manager of the Knoll Utility. I've been with the maintenance department of Township Parsippany for 31 years. Our Knoll budget has been reviewed and analyzed as to what courses need in order to run the efficiency and successfully course. We have cut some operating accounts that we did not need and weren't used last year. We do have some capital budget requests since the building is 30 years old plus, and we have some kitchen equipment that's original that we need to replace. A couple walk-in boxes need to be replaced. They're starting to rot. The floors are rotting, and before that's a health department issue, we need to address that right away. And we want to remove the caretaker's house that's been there and it's been abandoned. It's an eyesore. It's a hazard. We want to knock that down right away. And the pool house, I want to keep the building, but I want to get rid of the pool because we are using the building for storage. I think we got 15 or 20 golf carts that are stored in there because usually they're stayed outside. Now we got them inside in the building, keep them out of the elements of the weather, so that's working out. Next, recently we lost 2 golf professionals that went to different golf courses to run their program. So we're not replacing them. We're just going to hire some seasonal employees without any benefits, so it'll be good savings there. Outside the building, we're doing some upgrades. A lot of it's in-house through our Greens department with Matt, and we're doing a lot of, my opinion is, when these guys playing golf and they pull up and they want to drop off their golf bag, I want to make it look nice, so we put some new pavers there, we got shrubs there, we put some blacktop in the one corner there, we got a new fencing going around, just trying to dress up the place, and it's really looking good, so if any of you have not been up there, please take a ride up and you'll see how it looks good. I'm getting a lot of positive comments from members, and I want to thank our Greens department for helping out doing all this work. We opened up the waiting list in 2023, went from 609 members in 2022 to 784 members. We had 30 golf outings last year, we're up to 49 this year and counting. And basically that's it. Any questions?
Regarding the swimming pool,
Yes.
I've had a number of residents ask me, why aren't we restoring the swimming pool? We used to give lessons to classified children years ago. And a lot of people don't understand. I said, the pipes that feed the swimming pool are under the swimming pool, and they're rotted and corroded.
Mm-hmm.
The only way you could repair them or replace them is to remove the pool, which is exorbitant.
That's correct. Plus, it wasn't utilized, and it wasn't really worth the maintenance and running it for the summer. So that's when they abandoned it. I'm not sure how many years ago, but I'd like to get rid of the pool, but keep the building. And we, like I said, I just put in the garage door on the one side, and we're storing golf carts there, and it's working out great for that building, but I want to knock down that house right away.
Plus the pool, to repair the pool would have been in the millions, because it's such an old pool back from when, I guess in the 30s, that the plumbing and everything would have cost well over $1 million.
Yeah, you'd have to remove it and
Right,
replace it.
yeah, right. It's
Not
not
just
worth it.
repair it.
Well, first and foremost, congratulations on your recent promotion, Mr. Janarone.
Oh, thank you.
And thank you for being here today. I guess, my first question to you would be, can you tell me what you're doing differently than your predecessor? Maybe you could walk us through some of your priorities.
Well, my predecessor didn't really know government. I know government. I know how government works. So you have to follow the rules, and if you don't follow the rules, then things can backfire on you. So, trying to restore, when you pull up to the golf course, a lot of trees were taken down. Some trees had to be taken down, but a lot of them, in my opinion, didn't have to, as per my father, of course, because he's a tree guy. We're trying to dress it up, so I'm putting in fencing in, and we have it all along the driveway pulling up and across the parking lot. We're trying to bring back the beauty of the entrance. The golf course itself is gorgeous, the grounds, everything, and our team. So that's the other thing that I do, is we all work together. I tell everybody, I met with everybody when I first took the job, I'm here, you're here, we're all together. Nobody's up here, nobody's down there. I don't micromanage. I let everybody do their job, and if they have any issues, they contact me. Otherwise, everything is running smooth. And that's why that's as per our approach. John McCarthy said, let's open up this waiting list. And when you open up the waiting list, you're going to the B level, so you're not disturbing anybody who's an A member. And we're bringing in more revenue, and what is too now is that you're having tea times going at 4 o'clock, 4:30 instead of 3 o'clock. There was no more tea times, and the golf course basically was empty. So we're doing that too.
So what would you say, in your opinion, is the top 3 recommendations we can support you on to increase the revenue of the Knoll?
The top 3? Well, we're doing that. I like to eventually, I think we talked about that, is miniature golf. There is plans that were already designed for miniature golf in 2017 or 18, the lower and near the roller rink down there on the lower level near the east and the driving range. If we can get something like that going, we can make a lot of money on miniature golf, because that's almost year round. Unless of course it snows, you're not gonna be able to do that, but. And the revenue that we're bringing in extra is because we have a caterer now. We're supporting him. He's spending money now. He's changing the carpeting in the building. We replaced it. We sandblasted all the front entrance steps, because they've been painted over. The railings were rotted, so we get that all fixed up. So at least when you walk to the building, it looks nice. Otherwise, you can have a beautiful building inside, but if the outside doesn't look right, you just get turned off right away.
And what do the revenue projections look like for the Knoll this year?
It's 3.8 million, and it's been the same for the last 3 years. It's 3.8.
Joe, I would just like to commend you, because you've said now we have more golfers. I think you stated we went from 30 outings to 49, so that's going to increase.
So far, yes.
So far?
Yes.
So that's definitely going to increase revenues. I don't golf myself, but a lot of my friends do. And I've heard a lot of compliments about the greens, which Matt, I know, does a phenomenal job, and Kurt. So I just want to thank you guys. And like I said, just from people that I've spoken to, the Knoll is the grill room, the new grill room.
Right.
Looks great, and I know that's starting to bring in more revenue too.
Yes.
So
Right.
Just keep it up, keep it
Excuse
going.
me, we have through what John McCarthy, we got a simulator now, TrackMan. So that's going to generate a lot of money. Not so much this time of the year, but usually in the fall and the winter when golfers are looking for something to do. That'll be open, and that's going to be a big revenue boost for us.
I think making miniature golf is going to be a big boost. That's going to be phenomenal.
That's going to be phenomenal, because there's no miniature golf really around here.
I don't know. I mean, I'm sure it's going to be outside. It's a shame you can't make it partially inside.
Yeah, we're not doing that. No.
3.5 season,
That's
type
not
thing.
happening,
But
no.
That's going to be, I'm excited about that.
We had,
That's,
like I said, we had the plans. I reached out to the architect a couple months ago, so he's gonna come up and give us some more ideas, and,
I
see
think
what
that'll
we
be a
need to
big
do
moneymaker for the
for,
town.
funding for that, but that'll be a home run.
If I may, Council President?
Sure.
With regards to Mr. Jano's professionalism, when I hired him as the general manager, we did have discussion, and as you know, I was mayor probably 8 years, and the NOHO's always been on the radar. We discussed miniature golf, there were plans made, and we would have like a concession stand, family night, you'd have a whole bunch of things going on, which would be next to the driving range. Also, we discussed the actual country club itself, the building itself needs to be updated. It's pretty much, as you know, the room was updated, but there's a lot of other rooms in it that need to be updated as well, to make it really a true club presentable for golfers, which it is now. And I can't commend the gentleman in the back more than enough. I get so many accolades about the greens, and how beautiful they are, and how, upkept they are and stuff like that. So we have a great crew here, and it's really a pleasure working with Joe Janow with regards to this, because his heart's really into it. And that's what was important to me when I interviewed everybody. Yes, we can have individuals say, I can do this, that, and this, but his heart was there. And why? Been in town for 31 years, working in the township. Had a building and maintenance, and you can't ask for a better mix. We have issues in the golf utility, building and maintenance handling.
Right,
So save money there.
we do a lot of it in-house. A lot of it in-house. And I've been living in this town for 65 years, so it seems like I really like, yeah, I know I'm old, I know. Yeah, 65, I'm gonna be 66, but, like I said, I wanna thank, our team, it's
5
Kelly,
minutes left.
Kurt, John, and Matt, and everybody that works there. Like I said, I met with all the Greens guys last week. Just for a real quick comment, I didn't know any of the guys down at my Matt's department, and I said, man, I want to meet everybody, but, so I'm thinking, so last week I went to shop, I bought a couple platter sandwiches, some soda, some water, and I just met everybody. I just wanted to say thank you, and I met each and every one of them, and it goes a long way by doing something like that, and that's how I work. We work together. And that's how I get a lot out of everybody.
What are our plans for First Tee? Maybe John could answer this. Are we getting young people to come out for lessons, First Tee project?
I need you to come up to the mic if you're gonna answer a question.
So, starting in July.
You wanna hold on to this? Okay.
So starting in July, we're going to offer some junior camps. The second and third week of July. It's going to go Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. As we lost a couple golf pros, so we also lose the ability to teach more. And then with the addition of about 125 members, the facility is a little bit more busier, so teaching is kind of second priority, but we didn't want to, leave out the junior golfers. So we'll do that camp for 2 weeks. If we get a little bit more participation, then we'll try to add a third week, but we will be offering that. We have not worked with the First Tee yet, but we are registered with them. So they do call up and they'll send junior golfers to us. We also offered the junior golf rate, which Joe and the rest of the team we lowered so that we can attract more junior golfers to the course. But we do restrict them to 1 p.m. on the course. Just because of the addition of the members, we don't want to displace all the full-paying people.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Sorry?
You.
All
Thank you.
done? Okay.
You're all done.
All right, thank you for everything, and,
Keep up the good work. You and your crew.
At this time, we'll call up Mr. Sam Yodice with Recreation.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I know we gotta get close to the mic, right? So, good evening. I wanted to take a moment to express my sincere gratitude for the opportunity to participate in this evening's public hearing for recreation. I appreciate the time and the attention that the mayor and the council, as well as our business administrator and CFO, have given to this process. It is encouraging to know that our mayor and council are committed to the accountability and making a positive impact in our community. Regarding the Parsippany Recreation Department, the budget before you this evening is our recreational financial plan that outlines the revenues and expenditures of our department. To understand the Recreation Department's budget, it is important to have a clear understanding of the department's operations and services provided. Examples of services include planning and coordination of all the township special events. Also, the coordination of all of our summer programs, which includes our ADP, our all-day playground, and our half-day summer camp programs. Coordination and scheduling of athletic leagues, adult programs, and partnering with the PAL for inclusive, special needs, social, educational programs. Our department is responsible to schedule and coordinate reservations for all public spaces and facilities throughout Parsippany. That includes picnic areas, parks, tennis courts, victory gardens, open space areas, athletic fields, and pavilions. To give you an idea of what that means, in 2022, our department processed 12,717 facility reservations. That resulted in $128,000 of revenue. This budget includes several key components. The first component is revenue, and that includes the funding from registrations, resident and non-resident field and picnic area reservation fees, memberships, and activities that we produce. We do consider alternative funding sources such as grants, sponsorships, and make every attempt to try to supplement our budget with those opportunities to reduce the risk of inflation. But overall, the Recreation Department produces about $368,726 in revenue each year. Again, that is done through memberships, the activities and programs that we supply, as well as the facility rentals and reservations. The second component of our budget is expenditures, which includes all the expenses that our department will incur and usually occurs on an annual basis in providing our programs and services. I will be more than happy to answer and provide any detailed information I can in regards to those expenditures. But overall, our Recreation Department budget is a critical tool to ensure that our department is able to provide high-quality recreational programs and services to the families here in Parsippany. I will tell you, I've worked in county government and municipal government, and here in Parsippany, the township events that are hosted and held here are like none other. The 4th of July fireworks and concert, there's over 10,000 residents on an annual basis. The Fall Festival, 15,000 people, and an amazing amount of vendors. Our summer concert series and our new, this year is our farmers market. And I also want to thank the mayor and council for the continued support in the shared services agreement with the PAL. I think that it's an imperative process that is a relationship between the Recreation Department and the PAL that is continuing to emphasize all of the things that is good about Parsippany. With that, I'll be happy to answer your questions.
Well, Mr. Yodice, first and foremost, thank you for what you do for the youth of this town. You had mentioned that you have about 13,000 reservations. That collects almost approximately $130,000 in revenue. I guess, can you walk me through what are maybe some of the programs that you've instituted in the tenure that you've been here?
The day-to-day operations of the rec department have stayed pretty steadfast in the field permits and the athletic programs. I will tell you, as I flip hats and I put the PAL hat on, we've exponentially grown our programs and our participation on that level, almost increasing participation by almost 210%. We have over 13,000 residents that are walking through our doors of the PAL every day. As far as the Recreation Department is concerned, it has been a model that has been in place long before me. I know I sit here now, but Joe Plesha is behind me and obviously had the opportunity to, sponsor and host a number of other, and really coordinate and plan those township events for years before me. So.
And I guess, what are maybe some of the areas that you feel like we're missing out on revenue could be?
I would say, if I had to highlight one area specifically, I would review our ordinance on field permits. I do believe in looking at our field permitting system. We have an amazing staff and process and software system that can, it's robust and it can handle a lot. But in reviewing municipalities around us, we are well below our schedule, our fee schedule, compared to some of the other municipalities. Our picnic and pavilion areas are right on par, but I would say our field schedule, fee schedule is off. And that would be able to increase revenue.
And I guess, can you walk me through what, maybe some specific recommendations that, we could entertain as a way to increase revenue? Is that relate to increasing permit fees, changing fees for non-residents? I guess.
The permit fees, as they stand, we do have both resident and non-resident fees. Most of our parks, I think all of our parks, Mary could probably correct me if I'm wrong, have an attachment or are associated to the Green Acres. So with Green Acres comes regulations. So we are only able to increase the non-resident fees by a certain amount. But with that being said, if we were able to look at that fee schedule, I think the fees for our residents versus our non-residents can be looked at for sure.
Because the reason I bring that up is because, I've received some complaints through my constituents that there are non-resident organizations that utilize our field, often at a time that conflicts with organizations that have residents in them. Can you kind of speak to that, what your knowledge is on that?
So again, with Green Acres, unfortunately, we are regulated to having a fair and open process for the permitting system. So we don't really have an opportunity to necessarily not allow non-residents on our fields. However, we can have a different fee schedule for the non-residents. I would say the majority of our youth programs that are on our fields, I would say are probably most likely all our residents, our programs, our kids. But there are, I think you had that question emailed to me through Mr. Cryan, and we did highlight.
I didn't get answers, by the way.
I sent them before this meeting.
Oh, okay.
One of those answers was, the non-resident programs that use our fields. There's the adult men's and women's softball, there are non-residents there, and then there are non-residents in our volleyball program that play at our schools, and then there are non-residents within the soccer program from the Parsippany Soccer Club, but they do pay the $100 fee that is set by the ordinance, which is the ordinance. I have a copy of the ordinance too, but all of those fee schedules are set by the township ordinance.
So is there any studies or is there any estimates? I haven't received that email. I'll review it after this meeting, but is there any metrics? I'm assuming in that email it shows how many hours these non-resident organizations utilize our fields. Is that correct?
In that specific email, that data was not there. However, our system can compile all of that all those metrics and all that data. We can essentially report back to you on any organization and or group that is on our fields, how many hours they're on those fields, and what those dollars would look like if they were actually being charged those hours.
Okay. Yeah, because that would definitely be something that we could reevaluate, in my opinion. I think that if we're having non-residents utilize our field, especially at hours that might prevent residents from being able to access them, then it's probably worth looking at that ordinance to try and change that. And I'd be interested if...
I think what happens sometimes, and tell me if I'm wrong, guys, that the fields are permitted out and nobody has a permit. So if someone comes from out of town and tries to get a permit and the field's not being used, you're gonna give it to the out-of-towner because the field's not being used. But later on, the residents will say, well, we tried to get that field, well, you didn't request it first. So, and if we don't do that, and it'll just lie dormant, we'll have no fees coming in. If you want to add to that, because I've had that situation before.
I can tell you.
Mr. Plesser, you need to speak into the mic, please. And 5 minutes remaining.
I can tell you real quick, we don't block residents. The only time we have, You block out time for non-residents is Sunday mornings, really early, 7 to 9, 9 to 11. But any program in our town or residents that want something, I can't count them on one hand to say that I've ever denied somebody. So if you have somebody like that, it's probably more what the mayor's saying, where it sat idle, it was empty, so I went ahead and rented it to somebody else. But all our programs, all our youth programs, even our adult programs that pay for use, I make pretty sure that our own are getting it first. That's all.
Mr. Yoda, some of those sports that you were talking about, the men's softball and the soccer, those teams are comprised of Parsippany residents as well. There's a mix. So you may have a softball team that might be half Parsippany residents, and then there might be some other residents from other towns.
Yeah, yes, I would agree with that. There are, in particular with the men's softball, there's a verification process, so they do have to submit,
Right. And like you said,
but the
soccer-
issue, the difference with the adult softball league is they are charged by team. So they pay one fee in the beginning of the season for
Right.
one particular team, where everybody else is essentially charged by hour.
Right, and with the soccer program, you did state, I know we passed an ordinance a few years back. If there's an out-of-town resident, they do pay that additional $100 fee.
Right, yeah. Yeah, we worked out those hours. I mean, there would be about $156,000 of field usage by the soccer club. They pay about $20,000 to $25,000 for their out-of-town residents towards that, but the rest of the fees are waived as per the ordinance.
So just so I have a clear understanding, because it's an important point, we have an organization that is mainly composed of non-residents that pays us $20,000, but there's an addition.
I wouldn't say
Okay.
mainly composed. I would say and I can't speak to the soccer club, but as one organization, you have, they have a large recreational component, and then they have a travel component, which is their academies.
20%.
Which is the 80% rule that we have in the ordinance. So as long as they're complying with the 80% rule, they can continue to, have those fees waived. Right now, the fees that they do pay are essentially on the honor system, and that's where those, fees, they submit rosters, Joe?
Yeah,
Joe?
they submit a roster once a year, with the child's name, because it's all youth, and addresses, and they have to stay below 20%. Last year, I believe it was 210 children out of the 1,800, and they wrote us a check for $21,000. It's usually always in about 21, 22, 23, but they always stay within the 20%. We've been fighting that battle for years, and, they'd love to have, 1,000 travel teams, but, they know the situation, and they work well with us. So it's no way in the majority. It's, those are our kids out on the field, 99%, 80% of the time.
So are there some other ways we could potentially bring in additional revenue by reevaluating that?
I think just reviewing the fee schedule and comparing it to the surrounding municipalities to make sure our fee schedule is up to par with the surrounding municipalities, that would be my recommendation. I don't think that would affect any one particular.
1 minute remaining.
But that would maximize the opportunity for increased revenue through the field reservation schedule.
And then I guess this lastly, we forgot to ask this question, but could you just walk us through your increase briefly from 278 of 2022 to 468 for 2023?
Yeah, so I know there's been a discrepancy, I guess, on a number of budgets. I don't have that number. So our 2022 appropriation was $250,300, and I have a $493,560 number, and we are actually decreasing our appropriation for 2023 down to $468,060. So I think there was an $80,000 number that you're looking at, and I don't know that number, and I don't know where that's coming from.
Mr. Ho, could you,
Yep, I can pull it.
please?
Okay.
Yeah, this, looking at the exact same, I'm looking at the exact same sheet. So that was also in your email, Councilman Marcella, and I did reply back with, I couldn't identify those numbers, so, I did ask,
What was the increase?
the administration if they could, follow up with that number.
Except I moved the vehicles, but other than that, that's flat.
So, if you're looking at an actual from 2022 to the appropriation in 2022, in the township program line item, which was 697, we had included all of the components of the township events in that line item. And when I say components, I mean recreation, fire, police, and so on and so forth. The administration and during the budget meetings originally, we decided to reallocate those back to the departments rather than sit in the recreation. And so that decreased the recreation allocation for 2023 down to 193,750 for that line item of 697.
So wait,
No, go ahead. Ask a question, because
so
time's
what you're
up.
saying, the decrease was due to removing overtime in line item 697 township
Yeah,
programs?
I wouldn't say removing, I would just say it got reallocated back to the departments that, yeah, those OE&Es.
Okay, so, time is up. If there are any other questions, Councilmember Musella will follow up with the administration. Mr. Yordice, thank you.
Thank you.
For your time.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We now, call up, Ms. Genvili with planning, zoning, construction.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you. I'm Jennifer Veely. I've been with the town for 32 years. I am the Director of Board of Adjustment, Planning Board, Construction, Housing, Fire Prevention, and Zoning. And we made very little changes this year, so if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Yeah, I guess the biggest thing thank you for being here. The biggest complaint that I get from residents and businesses is how long it takes to get a permit in this town. What is being done to address that singular complaint that I probably get about the construction department?
It's a memo. So we responded to your questions this afternoon, and I have with me my 3 division heads, Terry Coletta, the construction official, Bob Schmidt, the fire official, and Scott Chazen, the senior housing inspector, in case you have any specific questions for them. But we did provide today an answer to your questions, and Terry Coletta did provide a memo that outlines the changes that we're making. He's also provided the organizational charts for the last 4 years to kind of show you how the change in the volume of applications that have submitted and why we've had to increase the staff. And unfortunately, I have to be honest that we were not, as my department's, prepared for the amount of applications that would be submitted in the last 2 years. We knew that there were very large projects coming to town, and we had no idea how many would come and how quickly that they would be prepared for a planning board or a board of adjustment application, and how quickly they would come through zoning and construction. I'm the zoning officer too, so in the zoning department, we basically have 10 days to issue or deny a permit. So we have to have the amount of staff to be able to approve those permits. In construction, it's very similar in the sense that applicants, once they have their prior approvals, they can submit to construction. But we have 6 admins in the department. Unfortunately, with time constraints and people leaving the township, we only have 1 experienced taco. The other 5 admins in
What? I'm sorry?
it's technical assistant to the construction official. And what that person does is they are trained in the 5 subcodes. You have building, electric, fire, plumbing, and elevator. So it takes almost, we think, about 5 years to have an experienced taco. So right now, we have an office of 1 experienced taco and 5 keyboarding clerks. So when applications come in, there's more at the counter, they're trying to take in the applications, making sure that it's meeting all the requirements, but they're not experienced to do that. So we're trying to make changes in training them, but that does take time. And there's been a huge change, as you'll see in those sheets of the changes of our staff. We also have increased the amount of inspectors in fire. We have 2 part-time inspectors, and right now we have a part-time electric inspector, or a part-time plumbing inspector, but we're definitely behind on electrical inspections. So we have tried to make changes. Since Jamie came, we've added the portal. The mayor worked with us, and Jamie worked with us. We now have a construction portal where people can go on and follow the status of their permit. Because you can imagine, as these large projects are coming to the town and we're doing reviews, everyone's calling about their deck, pool, shed, fence, and there are also all the commercial applications. So it's a lot of questions that are coming, so we've added the portal. But Terry provided this great letter that walks through all the changes that we've made to the department.
Can you read some of the highlights?
Sure, or do you want me to read them? Sure. Okay. Let me put my readers on just to make sure. With regard to time delays in the construction division, we are in a multi-year plan to make changes and upgrades to the division. We are working with administration to hire more staff, specifically qualified clerical staff and more inspectors. Number 2, the database program we used has been upgraded to a cloud-based program with additional features to include a portal the public can access to obtain information and status. Number 3, we have eliminated one of our file locations, hold. So there is one less place to look for an application. Number 4, we have tested using tablets in the field for over a year and have asked for funds in this year's budget to order more so all inspectors will have them. This will eliminate the need for paper technical sheets and save time in filing and looking for missing sheets. Number 5, we have acquired more space for our staff, but more is needed. In the future, we plan on transitioning to electrical plan review, eliminating paper plans, and the ability to make application online. Number 7, training is ongoing and a challenge. There is very little downtime, and we don't close for training or meetings. Most of our clerical staff have no prior experience. The inspectors and technical assistant are learning a new program that is very different than the old one. Number 8, we continue to update and create new information sheets to assist the public with the process. These sheets are now available on the township website. With regards to delays in obtaining the CO, the limiting factor for obtaining approvals from other township departments and divisions. This is outside the purview of construction, but we are willing to discuss possible ways to streamline the process. We then provided, we thought the easiest thing was to provide the organizational charts, because providing the organizational charts, you can see that as the years progress, as the amount of applications that are submitted and the amount of plan review and inspections are conducted, we've had to slowly increase staff. But I will be honest, in the last 2 years, I don't think we ever expected the amount of applications to be submitted and the large projects between 1515 Route 10, Park Parsippany, 169 Johnson, to just name a few. They are large applications, and each inspector is not just doing plan review, but they're also doing inspections. So we provided a spreadsheet that is in that email that will really help you see the percentage and increases over the years. And it shows a dramatic increase in the time and the percentages for each subcode. It's broken down by subcode, and it's broken down by plan review and by inspector.
Okay.
If I can just add, Councilman, with regards to the tacos, to the fire inspectors, one of the problems we're having is we're training them, we're hiring them and training them. And once we got doing that, the salaries in Parsippany, the starting salaries for these positions, they get up and they go somewhere else. And we lost a really, really good fire inspector because he went to the county and got $20,000 more a year to do the same. We've lost some tacos. Our starting salaries in the construction are very low, but they take the benefit of us training them, and then they go somewhere else because now they're certified. So that's an issue that we're gonna have to discuss into next year's budget, with you, the council, to let you know that, yes, we can hire, but they don't stay, and we do all the training, we do everything for them, but they're gonna go where the money is. And like Jennifer said, we have so many applications coming in. I know this firsthand because I negotiate, or not negotiate, I speak to the developers. When they get their approvals, we know it's gonna be hectic downstairs. I'll give you an example. Wait till Top Golf gets going. Wait till Chick-fil-A, as it really starts to build. There's gonna be inspections, there's gonna be so much going on, and then wait until possibly those warehouses get done. Wait until possibly the big fitness center comes. Wait until all the construction on 1515, Landadex, wait till that all gets really rolling. We're gonna have to reconsider and reconstruct them downstairs so we can meet the needs of not just the residents, because the residents are the ones that pretty much suffer because we have all these other big projects. So we need to look in the future, we need to discuss this going into next year, all of us, all five of you and myself, because if we want to get these ratables, we're gonna have to really, not fix downstairs, but to really get what they need. Or, guess what, you're gonna have a lot of overtime, because we need to get these projects done. Thank you.
Questions from the council?
Okay, no questions? Seeing no questions, Ms. Feely, we thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jennifer.
So at this time, we're gonna go ahead and, take a motion to open up the public session.
Make a motion.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Karifi, seconded by Mr. Neglia. Roll call, Mr. Karifi?
Yes.
Mr. DePiero?
Yes.
Mr. Musella?
Yes.
Mr. Neglia?
Yes.
And, Ms. Grignani?
Yes.
Okay, the, floor is now open. You have 5 minutes to speak.
So, do I have to sign anything, or just?
You can just state your name for the record.
Okay, hi, I'm Judy Fernandez. I have something that I wrote that I wanted to say, but, oh, it's not working?
No, not you, I found
It's on? Okay. All right. I had some things I wanted to say that I wrote down prior to coming here, but listening to everybody's wonderful presentation, water, wastewater, I used to be a water infrastructure person, engineer. I just wanted to make a couple of comments. Mr. Cryan, a galvanized pipe corrodes and is not great for drinking water, so I think it's prudent if they're changing from lead, that they probably do the galvanized pipe. And it was mentioned a couple of times in meetings, so I just thought I'd throw that in there.
I agree, but I wish that with these
Yeah.
mandates, that give us money to do it.
Yeah, I
That would help.
understand. And speaking of EPA and the PFAS and all that stuff coming down, the regulations is important for us to be on top, wastewater and water. I mean, they are subjected to the state requirements and the federal requirements. Having said that, the wastewater treatment facility has 50% of our energy usage. We have a grant to look at the solar panels. The Parsippany Green Team did get a grant to look at the solar panels, and we're still waiting for that work to be done. The grant, you guys have that grant money. Moving on to the other thing about surpluses, which is near and dear to my heart because I talk about that. Other towns that do have surpluses and use them in their municipalities between apartments or for offsetting their taxes, like maybe Jersey City, they have a lot of money. Our water infrastructure and our wastewater infrastructure do need dollars, and that's why we're budgeting. That's why we're borrowing for some of those projects. The taxes and other regular income sources should cover the general budget expenses, while utility fees should be used to fund our water infrastructure. Between 2012 and 2017,
utilities ended up borrowing $15 million for long-term needs, 2.5 million of that being interest. Borrowing for long-term planning isn't wise and puts a financial strain on residents as the debt needs to be repaid. By the end of 2021, that borrowing from the utilities was zero. But now we're doing it again. So we have, in the last 2 years, we have about an 18% tax increase and $3.3 million in 2 years from the surpluses are being used. I don't want to say rate, but they're being taken from the surpluses. These tax increases puts a burden on Parsippany residents and families, and it is increasingly unaffordable for seniors and young people starting out. Taxpayers' water and sewer bills are not being spent totally on water and sewer projects. We're bonding for these projects, borrowing dollars and incurring debt that we will pay for in the long run. Our utilities need to keep their fees to have the funds to plan for smart, sustainable infrastructure. Flooding is increasing, infrastructure is crumbling, water and wastewater systems are aging, and our water supply is threatened by things like PFAS and other things. We have groundwater. That's where half of New Jersey's water comes from, is the ground. So we need to keep up with what's going on in 2023. When we're talking about 2011 and the solar stuff that was going on at the solar plant, but it's 2023. We have increased storms, we have increased flooding, we have a lot of issues to deal with the future, and to be climate resilient, smart and sustainable growth is necessary. The administration needs to, any administration, not just this administration, but any administration needs to start thinking responsibly for a sustainable and resilient future, or we will continue paying higher taxes for a lower quality of life. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Hi, Bernie Clark in here. So I'd like to start by referencing the last meeting. At the prior public hearing on the budget, the mayor correctly stated that when I get the budget to the council, it's our budget. End of quotes. That means that the majority of the council can change things. And I happen to agree with that. The mayor then went on to talk about the prior administration's 4 budgets that, if I understood you right, Mayor, you felt were terrible. And yet we have three council members sitting here tonight that were on the council for that entire 4-year period. And since they constituted the majority, those budgets wouldn't have passed without the blessing of basically the current council. So that I just want to get out there. I have a few specific points on the budget, the 2023 budget compared to the actual 2022 expenses. Excuse me. I've tried to keep it simple. So first of all, on the executive salary line, which I assume is the mayor and maybe other people involved in his team. Last year, $144,000 was actually paid. This year, the budget is for $221,000. Now that's a 50% increase. Likewise, under administration, the next line down, last year, $633,000 was paid. This year, it's $784,000. That's a 24% increase. Now, I've also heard a lot of talk tonight about how, well, maybe there was a problem with the actual charge column on this budget. And if that's the reason why, I question how you could have put this budget out there with inaccurate information in the actual expense line. I simply eyeballed this thing, and I could go on, but I tried to pick some simple examples of what I'm talking about. Then, there's another line item, salary adjustment, on page 37 of the budget, $750,000. Last year it was $200,000. The year before it was $0. I think the words are pretty self-explanatory, salary adjustments. But I did check with a township business administrator from another town, and basically it is what I thought it was. It's kind of room for the administration, the town, to add more payroll to different line items in the budget without allocating it directly in the budget. So, I find that problematic. If it wasn't there, then the tax rate wouldn't have to go up by as much. If you need to spend the money, I hear a lot of issues here about different departments. I understand that too, but why not allocate it to those departments rather than this very nebulous $750,000 adjustment, which is far more than it's ever been. So those are my comments, and thank you.
I'd like to respond, and I don't know if you want to respond, Len, but maybe your BA, the BA that you spoke to should have talked to our BA before giving an opinion with regard to the $750,000. We have 4 contracts coming up. PBA contract, SOA contract, blue collar, and blue collar supervisors. That money's there to cover whatever we negotiate. We have to be prudent, and we also have to be ready. These contracts are in negotiation now, so that line item there is for us, just in case.
You want me to come back up?
No, this is, I don't know, it's up to you, Council President, it's not up to me.
You've already.
So your BA, the BA that you spoke to, he really should have talked to our BA, he would have had a clearer picture. That's what I'm just saying, he said this is the way that we're hiding money.
Sir, I'm sorry.
But we're not hiding any money whatsoever. And with regards to the sewer, I find it funny how Miss Hernandez chooses 2012 all the way to 17 to use figures and numbers, okay? But she did forget 2018, 19, and 20. And the reason why there was no surplus dues in 21, there was none. None to use. Okay, so water, let's take water. Within that 3-year period, there was $4,679,000 used without replenishing. And for sewer from 2018 to 20, there was $6,366,000 used. No mention of that. And that zeroed out your surplus. Plus the amount of surplus that they used into the general fund itself for the water and sewer utility, to run the utility itself. They anticipated higher, and that's why we got to the mess we got into. And I won't say other than the fact that I'm sure COVID didn't help any. Okay, I'm a realist. COVID did hurt. Office complexes were closed and stuff like that. But I find it funny that you call out the number of years that I was mayor prior, but you don't call out the years from 18, 19, and 20. So just be fair that way, okay, with regards to that. As for the administrative cost, Len, you might want to speak on
there
that.
were some headcounts we need to reallocate from between departments. They were allocated incorrectly in the past. We was just trying to fix it.
Anyone else?
If I may, Mr. Clark, could answer your question in regard to the budget. Myself and Councilman Neglia met with the administration, Mayor, Mr. Ho, Mr. Cryan, and our auditors on March 27th. And we were presented a budget of 5.25. Both Mr. Neglia and myself said to our administration that we could not present this budget to our residents this year. Please sit down with the auditor and come up with a budget that will be a good budget, take care of the needs of not only our different departments, but our employees. And that budget stands at 3.76 with a 2.57 overall increase. And as you know, and it's been mentioned before, the increase to a home average at $313,063 is going to be $99 a year. I think this is, I know I'm repeating myself and I'm repeating several of our other council members. This is a budget that is viable. It helps us this year and it will protect us for the next year. Thank you.
And I'd like to add to that, considering all the services that we get and all the continued services we're going to get, this is a very minimal increase of $8 and change a month. None of us like to see any type of an increase, but one so minimal to continue and increase the services we get in this town, including the safety and security by adding more police officers. I think it's one heck of a budget, and the administration did a very good job, even lowering it more when Mrs. Gragnani and I asked for it to be lowered.
And if I may add, because this was brought up on you, council, voting on the budgets, with regards to 2021's budget, if you guys can recollect, because I was in those meetings, with regards to the budget, you warned the administration against canceling appropriations and getting special dispensation, which really put the township in a real bad way going into 2022, but that was deaf ears. You were pretty much forced to vote on that budget because the state local finance board told you that if you don't vote on it, you're going to be fined for whatever. So that budget was pretty much, you were handcuffed on that budget because you understood that if you took and you canceled appropriations and you used the anticipation of 3 years of revenue, which you're not allowed to do, you're not allowed to base your revenues based on 3-year averages, but the state allowed the administration to do that. What do you get into? The situation that we got into in 2022, $8.5 million down. Okay, and that's what happened. The prudent thing to do was not to do that. You budget properly and you budget in real numbers, and that's not what happened.
Okay. Go ahead, sir.
Nicholas Camburis, 2 Woodland Drive. Can you hear me? Nicholas Camburis, 2 Woodland Drive, Boonton, New Jersey. I've been a Parsippany resident for 20 years, and like you, Mayor, my children have been here their whole life. It's the only town they know. But it's coming into jeopardy. At the national level, we have a president who is raising interest rates and the debt ceiling more and more, demanding more tax revenue. We have a governor using tax dollars for $300,000 carpets and telling us if taxes are your issue, this is not your state. And then I come here and even at the municipal level, taxes keep rising up. I'm squarely middle class, including what I pay $13,000 in property tax here in Parsippany. It totals about 60% of my income with the state, federal. And when you think about it, if I work 5 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday goes to taxes. I'm already into Thursday, and we're facing yet another increase. And I get that there's a lot of things that the town does, the things that I need too. I have 2 teenagers that are getting ready for college. They need braces. And then, another $400 comes out of my pocket for municipal taxes and everything else. It just becomes unbearable, and it gets to a point where it becomes unaffordable for people to live here in Parsippany. And then, they reduce the salt limits. So the deductions I can take are maxed at $10,000. That doesn't even cover my property tax. It just becomes more and more. And I think of that old Ernie Ford song, well, 16 tons and what do you get? Another day older and deeper in debt. And that's how I feel. And I know there's great programs. I do. But at some point, at 60%, 80%, about how much in taxes do I have to pay? I mean, Mayor, you know my wife, Sue. She works at your chiropractor's office. And we're talking about her leaving a job that she loves because we need to make more money to keep living in Parsippany. And I know, again, there's great things we're doing, but it becomes at a point that it's unaffordable. I work in the private sector. I don't get a pension. Due to the economy, my 401k is evaporating. When I stop working, the best I can hope for is Social Security. And at the rate the rates have been going at $13,000, when I moved to Intervale from Lake Parsippany in 7 years ago, I was paying $10,800, and now I'm paying $13,000, and it just keeps increasing exponentially. My retirement options in 15 years are going to be sign my Social Security check over to Parsippany, move, or just keep working until I die. none of which are great options for me. So and council members, Piero and Gragnani, I just want what you have. I just want to live my golden years here in Parsippany, a place that I love. I don't want to be forced out. And I'm not, I paid my fair share, I honestly do. But we have to look at different revenue streams. I love the idea that we get miniature golf and things coming in to try to take the burden off the taxpayer. And I hope we can kind of find some wiggle room, at least to get it down to maybe 2%. Just so like, I can maybe last a little bit longer here in town. Thank you.
If I may respond. Yeah, you go ahead, Councilman.
Nick, if I may add, you were right on when you started off your speech, okay? At the national level, the president we have now with inflation, okay? The governor, okay? These costs are trickling down to this level. You and I both know it. You and I both know it. Now, you're talking about, you said, can we lower it down to 2%? Right now, it's about $8.33 a month, the increase overall, okay?
Yeah,
Even if it went down to 2%, I don't know what that number would be, but what are we talking? What would that be, like?
Now it's
Couple
2.5,
cents?
the overall is 2.5.
Now the overall is 2.5, so even if it went down, what are we talking about? You know, I don't know what that would, a couple cents?
It compounds every
Right.
year.
No, I get it, but like I said, at the national level, with inflation the way it is right now, the cost of everything is just, it's crazy. It's crazy. You and I, we both know it.
I understand that. That's one reason why I'm asking.
Yeah. No, I hear you. I hear you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I think that you bring up a really good point, Nick, which is that we want all residents to stay here, and I've heard it mentioned many times, we have services, which is great, and I'm glad that we provide services, but somebody has to pay for those services, and those people who pay for those services are the taxpayers. And we have to move away from this thinking that every single year, it's just going to be another $10 a month. It's going to be another $20 a month. We have to start going in the other direction, and that's why a process like this is so critical, where we hear from people like yourself about what's not meeting your needs, and clearly there's a lot of people hurting as a result of large tax increases.
I'm going to sentiment off what Councilman Karifi said with regards, you know, the rate of inflation's 8%, okay?
Yeah, I feel that.
And all costs are going up in every department, all costs are going up for vehicles, all costs are going up for uniforms for police officers, guns, all that kind of stuff. So the township is in a situation where now, and, you know, you're not, and let's be realists, we need to maintain our services in town, especially the public safety services, police, our EMS and all that kind of stuff. We need to do that. It's very, very important, okay? I get it, Nick. I understand what you're saying. But the bottom line is that we have to service the residents of Parsippany-Troy Hills. We have, like Councilman said, 2.5% increase. Okay, we go to zero, okay? And it's not up to me. It's up to the council what they want to cut. We go to zero, next year will be worse because our financial bond rating will go down. We know that already. We were already told. We were already told that our bond rating is going to go down. Now, if our bond rating goes down, what happens? Our buying power gets weak. Purchasing vehicles, repairing roads. Right now, we have to, you know, we're going to be looking at it in October sometime because the bond rates went from almost 0.5% to 5%. Okay? But we need to service the town. We need to fix the roads. I get complaints every day about the roads, about Edwards Road, about New Road, about this road, okay? Nobody wants to really, we don't want to increase your taxes whatsoever. But there's nothing we can do when it comes to the fact that we have to service the residents of Parsippany-Troy Hills. I'll give you an example. Somebody came up here last week about senior services. So the seniors who built this community, okay? We're gonna just zero out their budget over there in the community center? I'm not gonna do that. I mean, the council can do it if they want. I'm not gonna do it. We just put an additional $260,000 into the budget, and I'll tell you what it's for. It's important we know this. Now, the council can take it out if they wish. $90,000 for our ambulance squads. The library received $78,000 from Mount Tabor. PIO, an additional $28,000. Additional fund for economic development. Now, you asked us where we can make a difference in ratables. That's where we can make a difference. Okay, that's $30,000. Farmers market, an increase of $25,000, which we're gonna look to offset that with hopefully funding from other sources. Provide funding to bring back bus trips for the seniors and rides so they can get their cancer screening, so they can get their dialysis. That all could be cut because it's all been added in. Now, we had individuals wearing shirts last week with regards to, I don't know where they purchased the shirts, but I'm ready to go toe to toe with them. I really don't really care. And the library, we subsidize the library, $381,000 to pay for the health benefits. They want to make a cut to not subsidize it? Okay, you take that total, you're looking at almost $700,000 to cut. Okay, but I guarantee you the residents of Parsippany want those services. They want, I know, but I'm giving you the facts. But they want all these things, and they need to have all these things. But what do we do? Do you want to cut you guys want to cut the library portion, the $381,000 that they get, so we can fund their health benefits? When they really should be funding it themselves. But we're doing it because why? It's the right thing to do.
I think you're missing something. I understand that these are great services, but then I could sit here and go through my budget.
Nick, I'm sorry, you've already spoken.
Oh, okay.
You know what, we can talk offline, okay?
Okay.
Come to my office.
Thank you. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Nick.
Thank you.
Yeah, you
Yep.
can talk.
Bob Iricane, I live in New England Drive in Lake Hiawatha. I'm a almost 52-year resident of Parsippany. By way of history, when I bought my home in 1971, my taxes were $1,400. Today they're $14,000. But I'm not complaining, okay? First of all, I want to compliment Mayor Barbario and all the people that were involved in this budgeting process. The people I heard tonight were thoroughly prepared to present their facts of their particular department. I think that's very, it's all transparent, it's all out there. I think it's a great thing. Living in Parsippany and paying Parsippany taxes, I have a view of Parsippany taxes in Morris County, other townships, because I do a lot of tax returns. And I see what people pay for taxes. And I see how reasonable the taxes are in Parsippany, pound for pound what we get. You go to other towns, significantly higher taxes on houses that are worth comparable to here, maybe 20-25% higher in taxes. Another thing that you have to consider as a senior citizen, and we always hear about senior citizens can't afford to live in Parsippany. If you're familiar with the state and a thing called PTR, property tax rebate, if you make under $90,000 as a senior citizen, for all intents and purposes, your taxes are frozen. And I have clients that have been in that PTR program for many years. Maybe their taxes today are $8,000, but when I look at what they paid, it's like $4,000, because the state subsidizes their portion that they've paid out. So I understand the complaints. I understand the complaints about budgeting. I understand the complaints about having the kids go to school and everything, but we've got to deal with this town completely, okay, completely, and worry that we're providing the services that the town needs. And as Mayor Barbario said, what are we going to do, cut out the township bus? We're going to cut out the senior center? You can't do that. You can't do that, okay? Maybe we have to sharpen our pencil and figure out ways of doing things more efficiently, more economically. But you guys are doing a great job. You're doing a fantastic job. And the tax rate in this town, for all intents and purposes, and as I said, most of the people in this room do not see property taxes the way I see property taxes, okay? I see it across the board, all income levels, many, many towns in the area, and this is the best deal going right now.
Thank you.
Nancy Snyder, 226 North Beverwick Road. Mayor, I'm going to need some help from you. You and I have always discussed how you inherited a very bad situation, when we were talking about giving away free golf memberships and stuff like that. And, I've always said you only have one get-out-of-jail-free card, and then future budget cycles are on you. Okay. So a quick question on that. You inherited a fiscal nightmare. Totally get it. I'm with you with that. Reported mismanagement, overspending. Since taking office and upon their exit, have you conducted an audit in regards to reversing the damage that was done?
We get an audit every year from our auditor with regards to our auditor, and I haven't gotten the audit report back from last year yet. But when I do, we will diagnose what took place and how we made it better.
Okay, so, right, but no cuts are known, right? No cuts are known as of this time from what you inherited from the previous administration till now.
Well, only thing we know right now is the fact that our revenues increased because we actually realized the revenues properly. We didn't use the Rule of 3 because I wasn't going to get it with regards to cancel the appropriation. When it first came in, I had members of the prior administration working, they wanted to cancel appropriations. And I said no, because I knew if I canceled appropriations, what would happen is those appropriations would double in 2023.
Okay, so I'm curious in regards to where there are redundancies that we continue. If this is going to cut into my 5 minutes, I kind of got to zoom, right? No, it's fine. Thank you for that. By the way, thank you for your thoughtful questions. It felt like a real engaged public budget dialogue, and thank you for the context on historical stuff, Councilman DiPiero. But again, I'm really curious what redundancies, unfilled posts, filled posts were addressed from the previous administration to now to at least provide some type of relief. I'm a little confused with the back and forth like the other gentleman was in regards to whose budget it is when, right? It just seems like when something doesn't need to be addressed, it's the other person's budget. It's the mayor's budget until it's now the council. I believe it's the council's budget now, right? Just not. Okay. So question for Councilman DiPiero. You're the longest-serving council person here of 40-some-odd years. Other than during the Christie administration and the 2% cap mandate, has there been ever a time in your 40 years that this township has ever lowered or held the line on tax increases?
Do you want to finish answering your questions, please, Ms. Schneider?
Okay. Oh, okay. You can. That's fine with me. But that is pertinent here. And because I ask is because as I listen to a lot of the rhetoric going on the dais, at the microphones and everything like that, I'm perplexed about the fact that the council people are sounding like they're innocent bystanders and they don't know how we got into this. You served decades up there, decades under multiple iterations of mayoral administrations. And yet the Republicans, calling themselves fiscal conservatives, had the majority enough to play hardball whenever a spending plan was presented to them. And if they didn't like it, they didn't have to go for it. I mean, I know the mayor referred to some years you were handcuffed, but again, if you have the majority, you basically can, turn around and do something about it. For instance, in 2019, Councilman Carriffy at an event asserted that 13 unfilled jobs under the Suriano administration were not needed because the township was operating just fine without them.
1 minute.
And then he mentioned that he even made a motion not to fill the spots because saving taxpayers $862,000 in salaries. So, really, what changed? Listen, nobody wants, just because we're cost conscious, we're not anti-police. We love our police. I happen to love Department of Public Works because I find that Department of Public Works are the unsung heroes when it comes to first responders, because police and firefighters would go nowhere without the men and women of Public Works.
30 seconds.
We do, all right, thanks, okay? Cost-conscious residents cherish their senior citizens, but we also cherish our senior citizens and disabled people who are very frightened about being kicked out of their house because they can't afford the continuous property tax increases. And I'm just amazed that you're all turning around and saying, we're lucky that we're going to have our garbage disposal in place. Y'all were charged years ago in protecting that in the first place. So don't act like
Time's up,
innocent
Ms. Schneider.
bystanders. We're not buying it.
You want to answer the question?
Let me just respond to that, if I may. Under our form of government, Faulkner Plan E, full-time mayor, part-time council, when the budget is turned over to the council, our power is to either cut expenses, it takes 3 votes to cut something out of the budget, or 4 votes to put something back into the budget. We cannot control fund balance in the different departments of utilities. We cannot control the administration from doing a hiring freeze for 4 years, where none of our department heads could replace people who leave or retire. Those vacancies are there, and they cannot be filled because there's a hiring freeze by the mayor. The council cannot have impact on that. We can't change that. The only thing we can do is when the budget is turned over to us, we can look for expenses to cut or dollars to put back with 4 votes. That is the power that we have. Everything else rests with the administration, and fortunately, most of the time, we can work with the administration. The last 4 years, we could not.
Okay, you're up, sir.
Kenneth Malmig, 8 Southwood Drive. I was not planning on speaking tonight, but I do have to say, from the point of being of a resident, that I don't think in a municipal budget hearing, it is appropriate to focus on the national debt limit and comments that have been raised. And the national debt limit has been raised over Republican and Democratic administrations for decades. I just don't think that's appropriate. The only other comment I would make is I've been sitting here largely as a spectator, and the one thing that struck me as strange is I heard about all the great things that are happening at the Knoll, that we've increased the number of memberships, that we've increased the number of events, but then I heard that the revenue forecast was exactly the same as last year. That didn't make any sense to me. That's the only thing I'll say.
My name is Bob Venezia, and I just want to say that Council Member DPO remembers correctly that the Jersey City, we were mandated to buy water from Jersey City to have an emergency backup, but that was for 100 million gallons of water, not 150. We have since bought an extra 50, and I think that was to make up for the underperforming wells that we have.
We're required to buy 100 million gallons per year.
Per year,
Whether
per
we
year,
use
yeah.
it or- Whether we use it or not.
Yeah, well, I'm saying now we're buying 150 per year, and that extra 50, I believe, is for the underperforming wells. So that's an extra cost. That's, it's putting a drain on our water department budget. And I was wondering how much the extra 50 million gallons costs.
Well, I'll have to ask the administration. I'm not aware of it.
I would have to guess approximately,
Mr. Ho, you want to wait till he's done with all his
Yeah.
questions?
Yeah, we need to,
Hey, we got the people, I mean,
Come on, you have time. Your
okay,
question will be
next
answered.
question. How much revenue is the 10% increase in water rates projected to generate?
Are you
I'm gonna wait
finished
for
with
that
your
one, too.
question, sir?
Because that's going to lead the other ones. Okay, how is money in the water surplus and the sewer surplus, the money that gets transferred supposedly gets replenished? I was wondering how exactly that happens, because I think it's done by jacking up utility rates, and I think that's what happened this year. I have another question is, back in 2020, on July the 9th, Parsippany's water utility was the third lowest in Morris County. I was wondering where we stand today after our 39% increase and our 10% increase. Where do we stand in the county today in relationship to other municipalities? And just in general, what is the benefit of transferring money, taking money from water and sewer and bringing it over to the general budget instead of just jacking up the general budget by whatever amount it needs? What's the benefit to the taxpayer? We're paying it one way or the other. It's just, it looks better. We're only paying to, whatever it was, 3.76%. Well, it should have been, we're paying 3.76, but we're also paying 1.8 million over in the water and sewer for the same services in the general budget. So it's really not a 3.86. It might be, I don't know, 6.86 for all I know, if all of the money were charged in the budget that it should be charged in. And I just, what's the benefit of doing that? And next one is, Mr. Beckmeyer mentioned that organizations are exempt from property taxes, and seniors who have their property taxes frozen are shielded from increases to the tax levy.
1 minute remaining.
But they do have to pay water and sewer services. So they're affected by any utility rate increases that are assessed. So when you raise utility rates and transfer that money to the general budget, you are in effect making these people pay for general budget services that normally they would be exempt from. And
30 seconds remaining.
And I don't, is that fair? And I'll tell you who really gets screwed under this is the Board of Education, because they have a big water and sewer, and, they will normally be exempt from, the property tax.
Mr. Ho,
there's a
Mayor,
lot of
would you like
questions
to
there.
answer some of the questions that
Okay,
Mr. Venezia has?
so for the water rate, I think for 100 million gallon that we purchased, right, John? Okay, I think that the invoice came in about 400,000 for that, for 150. So you can factor that in for 1/3 of that bill, approximately a little over 100,000 for 50 million gallon.
That's not bad.
And also for your question about, this is an $88 million budget. So from a materiality standpoint, there was a 1.8 million transfer from utility. Just from a materiality standpoint, this is 88 million in total.
How much revenue does
the general
10%
budget? The
increase?
general budget is 88 million, but 1.8 of which came from the utility.
How much does the
Mr.
10%
Venezia?
increase in water rates generate? That was a question that has not been answered.
Yep, that was a 10% increase. That was the latest increase.
In dollars, how much does that amount, how much you project, how much more revenue is that going to bring in?
We don't know. We have to look until the end of the year.
Okay.
There's
Thank
no
you, Mr. Ho.
exact formula
Thank
to
you,
that
Mr.
because
Ho.
the usage.
Thank you, Mr. Ho.
Other than $100,000.
Thank you, Mr. Venezia. Next, please.
Good evening, Richard Suarez. I apologize, I missed the first portion of the meeting. I couldn't get here any sooner. But I have a question. The anticipated revenues for the Knoll this year are $421,000 for the upcoming budget. Last year, their income was $159,000. Does anybody know where that other 260 grand is coming from?
Are there any other questions, sir?
Yes, I do.
All right, please state your questions.
Does the Knoll pay a water bill? Or do they, yes, they do pay a water bill. Okay. Is the water bill that the Knoll pays does that include both water and sewage? Because most of the water that the Knoll uses is only water, because it's not going into the sewer system. You can get a separate meter that will only register the water that's being used for irrigation, and therefore you wouldn't have to pay the sewage charge on that water. I did it in the place where I worked. It can be done. So rather than paying $35 for water and $110 for sewer, and I'm just, picking numbers out of the air here, you'd only be paying $35. You wouldn't be paying for the sewage treatment portion of that water bill. Now, does anybody else know about that? I'm taking that as a no. Okay. Last week, I brought a subject of the lighting at the Lake Hiawatha Library. Said it's been out for over a year. Has anybody here looked into that yet? Have any of the council members questioned that? Yes or no?
I think it will be answered by our administration.
Okay, because, if I'm just gonna come up here to talk and nobody's going to listen to the complaints, why am I here? Why?
We're just waiting for you to get done.
Okay. Lastly, last week, I brought up the subject of pilots. You could do a little podium here, it'd be a nice touch.
It would be nice.
All right, and the mayor brought up the fact that the only pilot that Parsippany has in place right now, does not include, housing, residential. I'm wondering if the mayor and the council right now are willing to pledge that any further pilots will not be to the benefit of residential projects.
1 minute remaining.
I'm not, okay, I'll wait for your answers. I will sit down, because if we're not willing to pledge that going forward, you know what's gonna happen. The people who are getting the pilots are gonna get the benefit, and the regular homeowner is gonna have to pick up the slack. It's not fair. Thank you.
Okay, so with regards to the pilot program, when I stated, I worked on a pilot program at UPS.
Yes.
And that was non-residential.
Yes.
But there is another pilot program that's being built right now, and that's 1515 Route 10. I didn't negotiate that pilot program. Although when I was the mayor, we did discuss a pilot program for it because it was mixed use, it was residential, it was commercial, and the town, and when you look at a pilot program, you want to make sure that the township benefits somehow, in some way. Okay, you're right. If some pilot programs, if they're 100% residential, there's 95% benefit for the township and 0 for the school board. And you're right, that's when the residents will take the beat, unless the township makes negotiates with the school board and gives them a certain percentage of the revenues that we get, which would be fair. I mean, because 64% of the tax bill comes from schools. With regards to the lighting, Jamie, I know you spoke to Jersey Central Power and Light, was it? With regards to the Lake Hiawatha lighting, we have contacted Jersey Central Power and Light. I don't know what the whole issue is yet, but if you want to elaborate on it, if there's anything to elaborate on, if not, I will make a phone call to them.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, we did look into it. It's being worked on. There's an issue with the box. JCP&L did not want to switch the box, and I believe we are at a point now where they are going to be working on it. That's the last I heard from Jim, and I'll follow up with Jim Walsh from DBW tomorrow, and we'll get back to you, sir.
Is there a timeline on it?
I don't have that timeline, but I can get back to you tomorrow on that.
Is it a week, a month? Is it months?
I think that's up to Jersey Central Power and Light. If they don't want to, work on the box, or if there's equipment problems, then we have to just wait for them.
We're talking about 2 light fixtures.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, we understand
The
that.
Empire State Building in 13 months. Okay? We're talking about 2 light fixtures.
So let me just say this. I will call my contact at Jersey Central Power and Light. The ball should have been rolling a while ago, so we'll take care of that.
Thank you.
The other questions, maybe you can answer, Len.
Yeah, I think they only pay for water, they don't pay for the sewer portion of the usage.
Nicholas Homyak. I would have to agree with some of these people here. We shouldn't be using water and sewer because of what happened before. The 11, and there's a few more of the 19 wells, I think 4 or 5 were down, or you couldn't get water, and the rest had problems. Now, who do you think paid for that? And a matter of transparency, these things are they're gonna crap out sooner or later, so you have to be ready. And we're because of so-called progress, we have all these different things getting into our water. Why do you think people drink bottled water? They don't trust the water anymore. But you need that for our health. Water is life. Water is life. If you don't take care of water, that should be a sacred system that surplus should not be used for anything else. And to increase the transparency, when you see these wells and these pumps, it should correspond with the amount of money. It should be right there, and the information, or at least approximately, will cost $1 million, $150,000. It should be right there in front of everybody's face to be transparent. One thing I would like to, when you pay for somebody to work, everybody praises somebody for merely doing their job. Well, that's what you're being paid for. But are you really doing your job? So to make sure that these people are getting the best bang for the buck, we have to make sure that the supervisors are inspiring the workforce to do the best job they can. This morning I come through the knoll, and there's a guy cutting the grass from the water department by the pumping station over there. And I was just passing through from Booton, so I'm getting the eyesore trash. They're cutting the grass. I see him cut one of them little liquor bottles. I get out of the truck, I show it to him. He looks at me, ooh. But we have people in this town doing the job. Go cut the grass. But they won't police the trash, so they cut the trash up. Now the trash is in little pieces. The plastic, it's getting into the soil, and then it's going to get into the water supply. So we have to inspire our workers to do a better job. If you say, go empty the trash can, and there's a piece of trash in the street, and the guy leaves it, there's something wrong with that. He's not community-minded. And I would blame supervision for not instilling a esprit de corps or a pride in Parsippany in the workforce. Crossing guards, are they paid by the police department, or are they just volunteers? All right, they're paid. There's the other day on Hiawatha Avenue, I've seen this before, there's a guy manning his post. There's a storm drain over here and a storm drain over there. There's plastic bottles in the storm drain. That's a police officer's post. He should police his post. And then the children that walk by, not only are they subconsciously being polluted by the degrading of the community through the litter, there's a police officer standing there, crossing them on the street in the presence of that condition.
1 minute remaining.
That should be unacceptable. One crossing guard even seen the kid throw the litter, so I look at her like, oh, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? Say something to the kid. Say something to the kid, or at least pick it up and put it where it belongs. So think about the best bang for the buck. And Mr. Ira Kane is correct. I'm a 73-year-old man. I live on 44,000 gross a year. And every year I pay my taxes, the town gets the money, and then I get it back in a senior tax-free. So what is the big deal? The big deal is making sure we get the best bang for the buck and don't mess with sacred funds like water and sewer.
Thank you.
Nick, if I may add, the crossing guards are not police officers. They have no law enforcement power whatsoever. And they have a uniform, but they have no law enforcement power whatsoever. They are there for the safety of our children. That's it.
But
That's it.
They should also be there for the health of their mindset. What would it take a few minutes to police your post? If you were in the Army or the Marine Corps,
All right.
and
All right.
All right, we're not gonna
came around, you'd be in
No.
trouble.
Thank you, Nick.
Anyone else?
He was last in the
Hi, Greg Witkowski. I spoke last week at the meeting and highlighted some discrepancies that I saw there. And I just like to say that I like to thank Len Ho and James Cryan and Dan Cassis for listening to what I said and took the appropriate actions to address many of the items and updated the budget accordingly. I spoke with them directly during the week. I sat with Dan for quite a long time. He's interesting, as anyone would say, and educational. I thought it was great. I listened to him. He addressed them, and things like other exemptions. He went over them with me line by line. He actually spoke about pilot programs. He gave me documents, some of his writings that he wrote on pilots, and he says pilots aren't good, and they probably aren't. I read all the articles that he provided, and we spoke since then, and I thought it was really good. And today's session was good, educational. I do have some items. I just said, is it feasible to do another study on the solar? It seems that was done 12 years ago, and it might make sense that cost of solar is down, and the panels are down, everything is down, so the costs are down, and it might give us some extra benefit there. And that's all I have to say.
With regards to the solar, I spoke to the superintendent of sewer, Joe Beckmeyer, and we will be looking into it. I know there's a grant, I think it's $20,000 out there with regards to it, I think from the green team, if I'm correct. So we are going to look into it, see if it's cost efficient and effective for the township.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Casey, 45.
You don't need to give your address.
No?
No.
Good. So, I'll just start with, this was my speech for the last week, but I had only 2 minutes left, so I didn't say that. I was looking at the notice of the meeting for tonight. It says the budget process is about maximizing opportunities to be transparent with the public funds, and to encourage members of the public to be involved in the process so they are fully informed about the municipal budget. The budget process works best when it involves the township along with the residents of the community to engage in a dialogue to communicate with the ideas of the process. it sounded like it was written by Elon Musk for Twitter.
So correction, that is not notice. The notice was placed in the newspaper. That's more of a press release, so it's not a notice. Yeah.
Press release, okay.
Because a notice means it comes from my office, that's
Yes,
why.
it was on the township, website. Okay. But it sounded like it was something Elon Musk will write. If that was the intent, why there was even a discussion of whether to have a public hearing or not, a couple of meetings ago? You know, I was really shocked. On one side, we talk about the transparency, and the other side, we were arguing about not having this open meeting. I'm very glad. I learned a lot from this last, 2 meetings, tonight and the other day. Why was even there a hesitation by administration and some of the council members to do so? All I heard is that there is nothing to be cut in the budget. That was the only excuse given not to have a meeting, that you are not going to find anything to cut. You all talked about the transparency, but you didn't want to be transparent for the budget process at that time. If you do not educate and explain to the residents about the budget, you will not get the support from the people. We used to have a couple of days of public hearing in the past, and at some point it was stopped. Maybe it was due to COVID. But now it should be on a regular basis, and there shouldn't be any discussion about whether to have it or not, the open public hearing, like we are doing now. Another point I noticed during these meetings is that we were talking a lot about overall 2.57 increase for the residents. But there was not much said about 3.76% increase in the municipal portion of the budget. Okay, these discussions, these meetings are for municipal portion of the budget. We are not talking about the county budget, fire budget, or a Board of Education budget. Our overall tax increase is low. The 2.57 is because of the school and a county and a fire and open space, those kind of taxes. They were all lower than us. When we discuss tax increases, we should talk about municipal tax increases. We should also give examples, not only just average tax increase is $8 and some change. Maybe you may want to think about it, because a lot of people like me, I pay $12,000 in taxes. So maybe like a tax table, you can give some examples of if you are 313, that is the average, 313,000 rateable, you'll pay $8. If you are rated at 10,000, this is what you'll pay. Maybe some examples, but that will help. Okay. I personally, I live in a 1,900 square feet townhome. 1 minute remaining, Mr. Parikh. Okay. So let me just keep my own stuff. From the comments that I'm hearing, it looks like every year our spending will be going up and we can't do anything about it. What that means is our taxes are guaranteed to go up every year. Increasing the rateable is not the only solution. We must cut spending. To do that, we have to think outside the box. In difficult times, we must take difficult decisions. We may not be able to find huge spending cuts in the
30
budget.
seconds.
But there may be many pockets of small cuts that adds up to a large cut. Please don't criticize when someone suggests a small spending cuts. That adds up. We must work hard to cut spending. We do that in our personal life, and we must do it in our professional life, especially when we are serving the community. So thank you for affording me this opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, would you please mention the cost increase that we're incurring for our health care, for our pensions? That's a big part.
I'm going to discuss that. I know everyone likes to see a 0% tax increase, but you have a healthcare cost of 9% increase, pension 15% increase. All these things are due, and the pension is pretty much calculated by the state of New Jersey. Mr. Parikh comes up here, and, this is the first meeting in a while I've seen him at with regards to budget hearings. Comes to my office and wants me to go above and beyond, and I will. I'll do it for any resident to go cut grass near where he lives, but that takes time. That takes time away from our DPW on property that we would normally not even cut. It's our property and stuff like that. With that being said, you have like I said, you have 4 contracts coming up. You have increases. We only give our white-collar employees a 2% increase in their salary. Okay, I know no one wants to hear about the rate of inflation, but it does affect the municipality. And that's a fact. Now, whatever's happened at the national level, we'll finally get to the local level through pricing, through increase in pricing, increase in all those types of things to run the town. And I said that before. But that's just the way it is. I guess if the economy goes well, guess what? Your bond rating is going to go well. The feds aren't going to increase your bond rating, aren't going to increase the fees, aren't going to increase the interest. So it does affect. What's happened at the national level goes to the state level and then hits us at the local level. And it's done through pricing, okay? Just trying to get salt for paving, with the roads. More than doubled in cost. Well, these things you need to do in the township, okay? Unless you want to do a massive layoff, like I asked last year, you want to lay off 150 employees, you'll get to the 2%. Okay, but guess what? You will have no services. I'm only being honest. I don't want to be ridiculed for being honest. I'm being honest. And, the last settlement comes up with regards to saying, we can do better. This is good. No one said you couldn't cut the budget. I warned you if you cut what could happen. And one thing is your bond rating would slip and go down. Trying to catch up. Look, we're trying to catch up with the police department right now. I got back, there's 81 deployable police officers. How many residents came here from Lake Parsippany to complain that their cars are being broken into, the catalytic converters are being stolen? Well, you know why? We couldn't man it. We could not man it. Now, we talked last week when Mr. Masella asked about violations, okay? Well, if they're not on the road and traffic, because we really have no traffic department, they have to be in the areas where we're patrolling. We want to have a traffic department. We want to have our detective bureau. We want to have all those things. Okay, why? Because public safety comes first. I told you what you possibly could cut, and what the things that we added in. Now, we talked about, I met with Justin Masella, the councilman, with regards to cutting positions that haven't been filled in 2 years. Well, we need to fill them, but they weren't filled in 2 years because we're too busy straightening out the budget. Now, I have DPW telling me that they just lost another man to another township, okay, paying more. He's has 30 employees since he started in Parks and Forestry in 1980-something. I think that's what he gave, okay? And he has those same 30 employees with 32 parks to maintain, okay? All the public access roads and the right-of-ways that we have to maintain and stuff like that. Listen, I'm only gonna be honest with you, okay? I can tell you, I want a zero tax increase. Everybody wants a zero tax increase, but then you have to decide. You wanna lay people off? Because that's the only way you're gonna get to it, that I know of. And yes, ratables are going to help us out. And we do try to find other ways to have revenues that come in. Okay, but remember, the townships are bound by certain rules and regulations, where there's certain types of revenue you cannot raise to make a profit. And if I'm wrong, Len, just please let me know. I mean, because a lot of individuals that come up, and I get it. I mean, I've lived in Parsippany since I'm 4 years old. I mean, I've seen changes in Parsippany. I've seen a lot of building going on, and now let's talk about affordable housing. Because that is where Parsippany is going to get crushed. Okay? I'm an affordable housing administrator. I got certified in the 2 towns that I ran. Okay? If you think in 2025 we're not gonna get smacked, we're gonna get smacked between the eyes. And we're gonna have a lot, because we're in the building area. Parsippany's in the building area. Okay, in the building area, the fair share housing, if you read the article in the Daily Record from about 2 weeks ago, pretty much said any towns are in the building area, and Parsippany is. Why? Because our office spaces are not being vacated. They're not being filled. Why? And what changed this whole thing? COVID-19. Everybody's working from home. So now we got to prepare for the future. Like I said, if you don't prepare for the future like we're doing now, you're going to pay in the future. And that's a fact. You're going to pay in the future. Now, we can come here and give those talks and say, my constituents, and it's everybody's constituents. It's Justin's, it's Paul's, it's yours, Loretta, it's Mike, well, he's missing right now. It's Frank's, it's mine. We all might look at things differently with our constituents, but at the same time, we have to service them. I can't emphasize it enough. Now, if you want to cut the budget, I'm not going to stop you from cutting it. That's not my job. It's been said tonight, and it's always been that way. Once I give the budget to the council, I'll give you my budget, it's now your budget, and it is. Now, sometimes there'll be a battle back and forth, they want to give it back to me. Well, give it back, because I'm going to give it right back to you right away. The bottom line is, I'm front and honest. And I said when I came back in 2022, that's what I would be. And sometimes people don't like honesty, but that's exactly what it's about. Now, you watch, with the last speaker that came up, if we cut anything and it affects, they'll be back saying, why did you take this stuff away? Why did you do this? Well, we can go to once-a-week service and garbage, but guess what happens in the summertime? In the summertime, when you don't only have once-a-week pickup, that garbage lays around in your property for how long? You're gonna get maggots, it's gonna be infested, it's gonna be horrible, okay? What we give in garbage pickup is amazing. What we do for the township, where I came from as a business administrator, you know, they had bulk pickup once a year. Once a year. You get bulk pickup every Friday, every single Friday. And we do that for a reason. Bulk pickup is basically primarily, it helps the senior citizens out. Why? Because they have a lot of bulk over the course of time in years. The other towns I came from, once a year, and I felt bad for them. We actually had to extend it one time because there was so much that needed to be done. Now, the recommendation I'm hearing tonight from a lot of residents is the fact that they don't want no tax increase. That's up to the council. The bottom line is, I told you what could happen, and most likely will happen. I sat with Moody's Standard & Poor's. Nobody here did. I did. And they told us specifically, they told us that if you cut too much, we're gonna downgrade you because we know you're not fiscally responsible, and you know you're not financially secure. They couldn't tell it to us any other way. On January 24th of this year, when I met with them, I told them, I've only been mayor back 1 year, and they were gonna downgrade us. This was in December 2022, they were gonna downgrade us. And you get downgraded, good luck trying to get a bond. It would just, prices, would increase significantly, purchasing police vehicles, from preparing roads, and all that stuff. I'm giving you the forecast that they gave us. But when they saw that we regenerated a decent amount of surplus, they thought we're on the road to recovery. And they did not downgrade us, but they pretty much warned us that this is a different formula than the past. So, I personally, I'm satisfied. I don't like it. I like to have a 0% tax increase, but I know which would happen. Now, say you did cut, because I met with Councilman Masella. Say you did cut $2 million from the budget. Guess what? I'm still going to get things done. I have to. I got to pave the roads. But guess what's going to happen on November? You know what November is? Transfer day. Transfer is the month where you can transfer funds from one department to another department. And guess what's going to happen? We're going to transfer money from the department that needs it, but we have no choice, because we got to make sure the public is safe. We got to make sure our roads are paved. We got to make sure they're plowed when it's snowing. So transfer day is not always a good day. You know what transfer day means? That you did not budget properly. That's what it means. That means, or expenses, things came up that you were unforeseen. We could do another thing. We can do an emergency appropriation. The state does not look good on an emergency appropriation when you don't have money in the budget. You know what how that works? An emergency appropriation is? They'll say to you, okay, we'll give you an additional $1 million into your budget, you can raise it. Guess what? Your budget's already up $1 million the following year. This is what I mean. You gotta take the future, you gotta prepare for the future, you're gonna pay for the future. Knock yourselves out. And I don't mean this in any bad way. You guys, if you think you can cut it to zero, understand something. That next year will be heck. I like to use the word that I like to use. The township subsidizes, does a lot of subsidizing and helping out the public library. Okay, when we don't have to help it out, but we do it. We've done it back in 2016. We gave an additional $800,000. Now we're giving an additional $385,000. Okay? The bottom line is this. I don't want a tax increase, but I'm giving you the forecast. I'm giving you and telling you what can happen. I know this can happen for a fact. I know it. So, you want to make your speeches, your political speeches, that's fine. Make the political speeches, go on Facebook, advertise it, that the township, well, first and foremost, nobody forced me to have a meeting with the public. Nobody forces me to have a meeting. I have no issue having a meeting with the public. And the reason why we're having this meeting, because you and I, Council President, got together, and I got a lot of individuals coming up to me saying this was very informative. I like the way you had the timeline. That wasn't my idea about the timeline. It was the BA coming from another town. They liked it because it was organized. It was questions were asked by the council. And I'll say his name, Mr. Hank Heller. He liked the way it was, and I said, you know what? And then Mr. Venezia, I agree with Mr. Venezia. He didn't have time to speak to the water department. I give everybody credit. I give Justin Masella credit as well. I respect that everybody wants the residents to be heard, and we did that. And I found this process to be very good. And not just that, the residents can ask questions, send them to the business administrator prior. Like any resident here or out there can always send a question to our business administrator, to me as well. I'm giving you the facts. I'm not going to be political. I grew up in this town. I know what it takes. And believe me when I tell you, I'd like to see a zero tax increase as well. It's that simple. But what is going to happen if you do that? Now, last year was a bad year. When I ran in 2021, I said to the residents, the doors that I knocked on, pain is coming. I don't want to do it. Who's ever the mayor, I stated it. Who's ever the mayor is going to have a very difficult year in 2022. Okay? The tax levy increase was 14.63%. I didn't want to do that. But I knew there was no other way out of the hole when I came in, $8.5 million in the hole. So you got to make a decision. Okay, I'm the mayor of the town. Everybody can say, I'll take the blame. Guess what? In our form of government, the mayor takes the blame no matter what. I get blamed for the school board taxes, and I don't have nothing to do with the school board. Nothing whatsoever. Okay, we knew what was going to happen, and we knew how to fix it. Okay, but there was only one way to fix it. And don't forget, Council Vice President said it in a meeting at the PAO that when they did special dispensation, the actual tax rate then should have been 16%, and he was right. But when you do special dispensation, you're not actually doing your budget properly, which brought it down to, I think, 3-point-something%, and then we get hammered in 22. So thank you, Council President.
Can I read a statement?
That's President.
Yes, of course.
Thank you, Council President. Thank you, Mayor, for your comments. First and foremost, I'd like to start off by saying that I appreciated the time the departments had spent with us and having had the opportunity to speak with them to assess the financial situation of the town. Equally, I appreciate all of the feedback and time that residents have taken to review the budget proposal. My obligation is to my constituents, and that begins with listening to them, and I'm lucky to have such high-quality input specifically about this increase. And throughout the course of these hearings, it was mentioned repeatedly that each department has nothing to cut and has been historically understaffed. I would like to dispel this notion by highlighting the numbers within the budget. When we came into office, there was 437 full-time employees and 28 part-time employees at a cost of $58,465,715. Proposed in 2023's budget, there is a growth to 453 full-time employees and 68 part-time employees at a cost of $63,743,794 to the taxpayer. That is an increase of 26 full-time and 40 part-time employees. On top of all of this, there is almost 24 non-essential and presently vacant township positions, with many of them having been vacant for 2 years. These vacant positions alone are budgeted at a cost of $1,363,155. It's for this reason that I would like to eliminate these vacant positions from this budget, so that way we can cut the tax increase almost in half alone. I would also propose that we reduce the increases of the following departments to the following. We would edit the salary raises and bonuses, eliminate the $328,731 line item for that. Parks and recreations would be edited downwards $200,000. Legal services would be edited downwards $100,000. The summer concert series of $90,000 would be eliminated, reducing the expenses of the administration by $20,000, OEM by $20,000, tax collection by $10,000. I'm not asking any of my colleagues to take a different position than they have in the past. In 2019, there's an article written during a budget spat with the previous administration where my colleagues at that time called on the elimination of vacant positions, saving the taxpayers almost $1 million. I agreed with them then, and I agree with those cuts now. So I'm asking my colleagues to join me in a formal motion which would minimize the tax increase on residents, and I formally move that the 2023 proposed budget be reduced by $2,131,886, according to the adjustments I've laid out.
And where's that going to be putting our services for our people? What about the police department? What about our parks and forestry? What about our public works? What about our senior citizens? You know, Councilman Musella, yeah, these are great cuts that you want to make. But we've just heard from each and every department over the past 2 weeks that we need workers. We're losing workers because we're not paying a sufficient amount of money. But you want to cut concert summer series. You want to cut legal bills. Well, I don't know what's going on with the legal department. Do we have some issues that are going to be coming up? I don't know that.
Negotiations.
To you. Negotiations. Yeah. Okay. You just make a mention of $2 million.
Mr. Ho, how much will $2 million?
It'll cut it because we need.
Well, how much would it benefit the homeowner instead of $833 a month if you would have cut $2 million?
It's not,
$2 million would put you under 1%.
Right, but yet what is it doing to our residents? What about our safety? What about all the other services that we are receiving? Okay, we just can't arbitrarily say, let's deduct $2 million from this budget. I'm sorry.
I agree with you.
Respectfully, Councilwoman, I'd just like to address your points. I made no mention of cutting any funding to the police department. I was fully supportive of the additional police officers that we have. In my view, these are mostly edits to ancillary items. It negates any layoffs, and it's eliminating vacant positions, something that people on this council previously supported doing. So if we can't go the full way of $2 million, that's fine, but let's at least take steps in that direction. Let's have the dialogue about what we can cut, because for the better part of these 2 meetings, the tonality has been, we can't cut anything, everything is off the board. But let's turn that on its head. Let's explore how we can better allocate our resources so that way we can prevent this from happening in the future.
Well, one of the things that Mr. Walsh stated when he was up here was there's been particular incidences where he said to take as many as 14 employees from Parks and Forestry and have them collect garbage and fill in for our sanitation department. And then our parks are not being able to be maintained because those people are picking up garbage. And that's because he's short, and we've 30-something parks we have now. So, and he's been working short for that long. When's it going to come to a time where all of a sudden he says, hey, guess what? Your garbage was supposed to be picked up on Monday, but we didn't have enough people to pick it up, so that half of town, your garbage didn't get picked up that day because we don't have enough employees.
Plus your overtime, your overtime rate will go up, and that's not budgeted right now. If you would eliminate positions that have to increase the overtime, portion of the budget, because you're gonna have to have more overtime, so you can let's face it, we gotta clean the parks. You gotta remember, we have a joint insurance fund. If we don't maintain our parks properly, and we don't have enough workers to maintain them, and somebody gets injured, we're gonna be responsible. It's that simple. That's number one. Number two, I know the councilman said he's not going to cut the police department, but when you cut $2 million, we gotta get the money from somewhere, because we're still gonna have to plow the roads, we're still gonna have to get the salt, we're still gonna have to do all those things. So we gotta hope that the police budget has a certain amount of money left over in November when we have to transfer. So one way or another, we're gonna have to get it to maintain. But one thing Len didn't allude to was what our financial status would become. And it's not gonna be good for us next year. So when the bond rating goes down, our leverage goes down with it. And guess what? When the leverage goes down, still, we're not out of the rate of inflation at 7.1%. It's probably still gonna be there. Hopefully it comes down lower. But the recovery on pricing, first of all, we can't even get certain vehicles to begin with. So those vehicles are gonna lapse over to next year, when prices will probably be even higher. So, I could sit here all day. I told you how I felt, what you wanna do is up to you, but our financial status will take a hit, we'll take a hit, and then, we'll see where we go from there, but that's not up to me. If you wanna make those cuts, feel free.
Most of these are just reductions in the increases in expenses. So what I don't understand, and walk me through this, if Moody's saw us eliminating expenses and keeping the reductions a lot smaller than they are presently allocated, why would Moody's say that that's a step in the wrong direction? How could that compromise our bond integrity if we're reducing the operational expenses of this town?
Part of the municipal budget mechanism, there's any additional funding remaining will lapse into a fund balance, which helps generate future fund balances, which is the town's very lack of at this moment. The 5.4 million being used as a surplus, as an anticipated revenue, relies on a certain degree from leftover funding from previous budgeting to help rebuild that 5.4. So if you, let's say, in theory, you cut down everything down to the penny, you have no fund balance enough for your future budgeting. So that's part of the mechanism that's there. There's also need a certain degree in an $88 million budget. You need 1 or 2 million of small degree of flexibility in that budget in order for anything unforeseen that you need budget transfer for. Let's say it comes November, certain department needed additional funds. That's where we needed it. That small degree of flexibility needs to be in place in a municipal government. That's part of being financially conservative.
Could we have somebody from Moody's just theoretically come here and explain to us that if we were to reduce our operating expenses, how that would impact, if any, to our bond rating? Is that possible?
He just explained it to you.
Well, I understand, but
I mean, he
I would
explained
prefer
that.
to hear some from...
He explained that, well, first of all, Standard Moody & Poor's wants us to have 12% of our budget to be surplus, which would be $10,600,000 on an $88 million budget. He just explained that if we cut the expenses towards zero, and we don't generate that revenue, that is exactly, if we don't get that surplus, that's exactly how they downgrade us. That's a simple equation, okay? But what they would say, I guess, is they just want to see us to be financially stable. It's like, everyone, to talk about your personal life, it's like you having a credit card, okay? And then all of a sudden, people with bad credit, what? Their credit card rate is what, 26, 27%. People with good credit, they get the lower end of it. Same thing buying a house. If you have bad credit, guess what? You're going to get a 9% loan, but if you have really good credit, you're going to get a 2.9% loan. Well, it runs pretty much the same for the township. If you have no surplus, that means you're not financially stable, which means your bond rating is going to go up because why? Because you're a risk. Okay, I don't want the township to be a risk. Perfect example. You take the county, they got a AAA bond rating. So if we were to bond, say, a building, we can go through the improvement authority through them. because they have AAA, and guess what the rate is? 2.5%. But if you use our bond rating with a double A, I guess we're what, a double A?
AA2.
Double A2, we'd be at 5-6%.
Big A, small A, too.
Right. And that's the effect it would have on the township. I wish, you know, we didn't have to bond, but we do have to bond for certain projects, especially roads. Roads are so behind, because in 2021, 1.8 million was in capital for roads. On a budget, on a engineering budget for roads, that should be 7 to 8 million. So there was really no roads done in 2021. In 2022, we increased it, but not where it needed to be. We increased it to, I think, $3.5–4 million, and, you know, we're still not catching up from 2021. Now, the American Rescue Plan money that we got, you know what that was supposed to be for? Capital improvements, roadways, and it was used for revenue. That's what it was used for. So when I came in 2022, guess what I have to use it for? Revenue, because they used it for revenue already. But it should have been used for roads and repairs. Now, this year, we have to start catching up with those roads. We have no choice, because some of the roads are so bad that, you know, like, I'll take Edwards Road, New Road. They're so bad, it's not even funny. That's gonna be a significant increase because the water goes underneath those roadways. Go to Lake Parsippany. Certain sections of Lake Parsippany are so bad that I even said to the engineer, I said, listen, we gotta get on this. Well, there's not enough funding. So next year, you know, if we have maintained a good bond rating, we have generated a good enough surplus, we're gonna be able to do those roads, because we're catching up. And listen, you know, we can go back to the last 4 years. Now I gotta deal with it. Of course, I'm gonna deal with it. But I'm just warning you that if you were to cut $2 million out, where we're headed, because we're not gonna, you cut $2 million out, you already know you're not gonna have any fund balance. You know it already. There's not gonna be any. But it's not my call.
And I think to your point, Mayor, you know, I want to work with you to bring in as many revenues in, like any business, to ensure that our future is as bright as possible. So that way, we do have the money to provide these high-quality services to the residents, but
Well, here's where you and I agree.
Okay.
We know the way to do that is through ratables.
Sure, we agree on that, and that's why, you know, it's so important to have a great construction department that can issue a CO as fast as possible. So these ratables can come online, and we can start having them being taxed, and then families can build the homes that they want to build. But where my focus is, and the subject at hand, is working together to identify how we can reduce expenses. And I've spent hours, and you know this, and I know you've presented the best budget that you can, but I feel like there's significant opportunities for us to work together and eliminate some expenses. We have to operationally look at what we can identify. And these are the ideas that I've come up with, and if you guys have ideas of your own, I'm more than happy to consider and talk about them, because having a healthy dialogue about how we can have a better township is a win-win for everybody.
How about we do this, you and I?
Yeah.
You come to my office, we'll sit and talk, we can go through the budget, we'll have Len there, we'll discuss. Maybe there is something that can be cut, but I can tell you this, in the millions would just devastate the town. Maybe there's a, you know, it's like Ronald Reagan said, it's better to get a half a loaf of bread than none. I get all that. So we can discuss it, but I will say this, and you and I agree on this.
I'll buy you coffee.
We have a very good forecast on ratables coming, okay? And when I hear we're gonna have $200 million in new ratables, these ain't like, and you take the rate, if the rate is like now 3%, that's $6 million increase in revenue. That's significant. And that's why, you know, the way the future's gonna go with affordable housing, there's gonna be a mixed-use element that we're gonna have to agree to. Because if we don't agree to it, the builder gets a remedy. It's called builder's remedy. And once the courts deny us, because they're going to, I've been in a town where they did, guess what happens? They don't need any zoning. That developer can build wherever he wants. And it's wrong, it's wrong. So I'm willing to work with you, Councilman.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I'm gonna ask the two money people here, Mr. Ho, Mr. Crine. If we were to cut $2 million out of the budget, would that be devastating to our town and operations?
Yes, I'm completely against it, because that prevent us from regenerating surplus in general surpluses.
And Mr.
which-
Crine, your
where-
opinion?
Which is, the town is very lack of at the moment.
Thank you.
Can you help me?
Hold on, Mr. Klein, you're,
I agree, yeah, it would be devastating, especially, the Mayor mentioned the affordable housing element that's coming on. There are going to be an incredible amount of units coming on each year coming up. To make these cuts would be devastating.
thank you.
So what we'll do, like I said, we'll set up an appointment in my office.
Okay.
You bring the coffee.
Yeah. Thank you. All right.
Make
See
a mo-
no one,
I'll make a motion to adjourn, or
make a motion to close the public session, please.
motion?
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Karifi. Sorry, Mr. Misello, were you gonna say something?
I thought I didn't hear Neglia second it.
Okay, so a motion made by Mr. Karifi, seconded by Mr. Neglia. Roll call. Mr. Karifi?
Yes.
Mr. Misello?
Yes.
Mr. Neglia?
Yes.
Ms. Grignani?
Yes.
Floor is closed. Can we get a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion.
Motion made by Mr. Karifi, seconded by Mr. Misello. Roll call. Mr. Karifi?
Yes.
Mr. Misello? Mr. Neglia?
Yes.
And Ms. Grignani?
Yes,
Okay, we're adjourned. Have a good night, everyone.
thank you.
Oh, look at that.